This is the first part of the recovered transcripts of the Death Stranding incident. Fragmented interviews, personal journals, and field reports preserved in analog. Some were spoken aloud. Most were never meant to be heard. They come from couriers, scientists, soldiers, from the broken-hearted, the hopeful, and the damned. Each voice a signal across time, stranded, but still reaching. Together they form a map of a world unraveling, and the fragile threads trying to hold it together. What follows is not a story with answers, but with echoes. So rewind if you must. Press play when you're ready. Bridges staff. 2 years ago. Distribution center west of Capital Knot City. It's been about a year now since we came here with the rear guard. The first folks who did us the favor of setting up the chiral relay and patching things up before we arrived. So we're doing alright. Not so sure about everyone else though. Folks back home sound kind of freaked out. We don't know what's going on in Central or Capital, let alone how Amelie and the others who kept heading west are doing, but something doesn't feel right. What's more, a lot of the guys have developed some kind of agoraphobia. Like the thought alone of going outside scares the shit out of them. See, the distro centers and way stations around these parts aren't like the ones back east. They're much more isolated, out in the middle of nowhere. Can't help but feel cut off from the world. And there's not a lot of staff on hand neither, which means you often have to do the work of 2 guys, which can make it that much lonelier too. And then you factor in the terrorism rumors. Also, is it just me, or does it feel like there's more mules out there these days? Don't get me wrong, I know they're not out to get us. All they want is our cargo, right? Well, that doesn't change the fact that they're not making our work any easier. Especially since a lot of these guys used to be first-rate porters, and could run rings around us if they hadn't, you know. Still, for now, their network systems are up and running. And we're just holding out for the day when the second expedition comes through with a working Cupid. Till then, we'll keep things chugging along. That much we can do. For Bridges and country. Am I right? Timefall and power failures. I volunteered to join Bridges. Signed up with my brother Victor. See, we both remembered when America was still America. When we still had planes and satellites. When we were still connected to everyone and everything. The world was different. Bigger. And we wanted it back. He was chosen for the first expedition and hit the road damn near straight away. Me, I got told to hang back here in Central. Which is okay, I guess. Corpse disposal means taking your fair share of timefall in the line of duty. You get a sense for it after a while. A sixth sense for when the clouds are about to open up. Of course, the clouds themselves are a big tell, and an inverse rainbow's a guarantee you're in for some shit. But there are smaller signs too. Changes in the air. A smell on the wind. When it hits, you got power outages to deal with. Far as I understand it, which ain't all that far, it's to do with high concentrations of chiralium, causing electromagnetic interference or something. Which also interacts with water and kicks up clouds of ozone, which then makes the temperature drop like a rock. Anyway, I may be used to timefall, but that don't mean I'm immune to it. Believe me, I'm younger than I look. My big brother would take a lot of pleasure in telling you that if you could see me now. The lake at Ground Zero. When I first laid eyes on the lake here at Ground Zero, I was blown away by the sheer size of it. I never imagined anything to be so huge. This was just after the Death Stranding, and not many people had seen the craters up close yet. Back then, I was still living with my parents and my brother on the East Coast. An explosion like nothing the world had seen before tore a gaping hole in the heart of America. There were all kinds of rumors floating around at the time, that it was a meteor, that it was a nuke dropped by another country. I was just a kid, but even I could tell the adults didn't have a clue, so you can imagine how I felt. And then we found out there were other explosions, not just here in America, but the world over. By the time we learned they were voidouts, and what voidouts were, the country was pretty much done. But hey, that was then and this is now, and things are looking up. I just got told my kid brother's still alive. Word is he's heading up a corpse disposal team in Capital Knot City. Handled his shit well enough to get picked up for the second expedition. 3 more years, and he'll be out here with me. Can't wait to see him again. Interview with the geologist. I remember it was just before I joined the expedition when I found those documents in Bridges HQ, research papers that predated the Death Stranding. People used to believe the dinosaurs had gone extinct at the end of the Cretaceous period, 65 million years ago. But when this fellow investigated various locations where late Cretaceous dino fossils had been found, he came to the startling conclusion that there was hardly any evidence anywhere on Earth that supported the theory that dinosaurs had survived until the end of the Cretaceous. In other words, almost all of them had been wiped out long before that. The only place where there were fossils that did support the traditional theory was here, in North America, which suggests that this was the last part of the Earth to have been inhabited by dinosaurs. Not everyone agreed with this analysis at the time, but let's say he had it right. That would mean there is evidence of a mass extinction hidden here, right beneath our feet. Evidence which could prove invaluable in understanding the one on the horizon. Did the dinosaurs who happened to live here just get lucky? Or is there something special about this place that allowed them to survive? I'd love to get at the bottom of it, but I'm not sure I have what it takes. I'm not like Hartman. I don't have dooms or any other unique traits. Still, I want to make myself useful. I want to research the Stranding and help uncover the truth behind it. That's why I joined the expedition team after all. Interview with a paleontologist. In the period since the very first forms of life arose here on Earth, the planet has witnessed a number of mass extinctions, and as you're no doubt aware, the most significant of these are known as the Big Five. The first marked the end of the Ordovician period, while the next, at the end of the Devonian period, wiped out almost all marine life. But the third of these extinctions, at the end of the Permian period, around 250 million years ago, was even worse. 96% of all marine organisms and 75% of land organisms died as a result. The fourth extinction finished off most large reptiles, though the dinosaurs managed to hold on until the fifth came along at the end of the Cretaceous period, 65 million years ago. We humans are evolved from the small mammals, which managed to survive that particular catastrophe. Each of these 5 extinctions resulted from enormous changes to the natural environment. Species which were unable to adapt to these changes perished, while those which were ideally situated to evolve and thrive did just that. Evidence from records which predate the Death Stranding indicate that many scholars believed a 6th mass extinction was on its way, or that it may have already begun. There was something of a consensus regarding its cause as well: humanity's destruction of the environment. This led them to sound the alarm, warning the world of what was at stake. At the time, the greatest minds of the era believed that if the ecosystem could be preserved, and if humanity could learn to live in harmony with nature, then a future could be secured for all the world's species, humans included. But that was then, and this is now. If the phenomenon we are currently experiencing is indeed the 6th extinction, then it must be acknowledged that humanity is its main target. Is this divine punishment for our misdeeds? If so, then I suppose there is little that can be done. Perhaps there is no way forward for humanity now. Nevertheless, I refuse to give up. I will endeavor to find hope in our predicament. Interview with the Evo Devo biologist. I was born after the Death Stranding, so my conception of what the world once was is derived entirely from documents, photographs, and video. We didn't used to have timefall for one, just regular rain. No chiral clouds, only the traditional masses of suspended moisture. And one certainly didn't have to worry about tar bubbling up from underground, in most locales. Humans could travel anywhere, even into space, and we were blissfully unaware of the beach's existence. Suffice it to say, there is no doubt that this is a period of sweeping change that will have lasting repercussions for all life on Earth. Given that, dooms may simply be humanity's way of trying to adapt and survive. A beach exists within the consciousness of every individual. But these environmental changes, they affect all life on a genetic level, do they not? That's why I thought to investigate them, and the medium through which I chose to do so is the tar, which has become so ubiquitous. But you're not interested in that, I'm sure. So you know, there is a very real possibility that we have already failed to adapt to the 6th extinction, that we are but another evolutionary dead end, soon to be left behind. If that is the case, then it could be reasoned that the ones afflicted with dooms, and therefore blessed with an enhanced perception of the beach, are our successors, who will survive and supplant us. I suppose that would be a shame, but it doesn't trouble me all that much. My research will survive me as well, and the dooms sufferer can pick up from where I left off. They will carry on my genetic lineage too, for that matter. No, what worries me is that not even dooms will prove sufficient enough to endure this extinction. If that is the case, then humanity is doomed. It's certainly a possibility we have to acknowledge. But more than that, one question looms above all. Why? Why now? Why like this? That's what I want to know more than anything. Somehow I doubt the dinosaurs and all the other species that came and went ever considered that question. Worrying over the reason for this and that is a uniquely human condition, I suppose. Yet this idle curiosity may be the key to understanding and overcoming the stranding. Tar bubbles up from the beach. I've heard that this area was pretty inhospitable before I got here. Got your fair share of mountains, obviously. And on top of that, there were all these rumors about a secret terrorist base or something. So I figured I was in for a bad time. But when me and the team got here, yeah, it was way worse than what we thought. Felt like we could get jumped at any second, you know. I'll tell you what, though, I couldn't believe my eyes when I saw all the tar out west. Wondered how the hell Amelie and her team made it through. But someone said it wasn't nearly as bad when they made the trip. I was sent out to take a closer look, and man, it was something else. And it hadn't been that long either. Hard to imagine all that bubbled up damn near overnight. Honestly, it felt like I was standing at the edge of the world. We don't know much about the tar, except that it wasn't around before the stranding, same as Timefall and Corallium. There's some speculation that it might be some byproduct of the beach, and that if you could somehow retrace the flow, you'd end up there. But that's all theoretical stuff. Right now, we've got a practical problem to deal with. One of the chiral relays we built is at risk of going under any moment. We don't have the manpower to relocate it yet, but we should once the second expedition shows up. Whether we can wait that long is another question, though. Maybe you could tell them to get their asses in gear if you get the chance. Corallium coatings. Truth is, we discovered it by dumb luck. Folks had made a point of building cities outside of Timefall regions, but the way stations and the distro centers were a different story. No way around it, really. Even through all that exposure, meant that they'd deteriorate quicker. But when you're keeping an eye out for things deteriorating, you soon notice how Corallium crystals react when exposed to Timefall. Which is to say, not at all. They showed no signs of degradation whatsoever. Stayed rock solid, even after getting soaked. It sort of made sense. Corallium comes from the beach, right? And over there, time doesn't pass. Timefall had no effect on the crystals, because they may as well exist outside of time. And when we ran a few experiments, that's pretty much all we confirmed. Now I know what you're thinking. Why not build way stations out of Corallium, right? Yeah, if only. Turns out overexposure to that stuff is lethal. And it can't be stored in large quantities either. Still, at least the Corallium coatings we came up with do just enough to keep the rot manageable. That's something. Oxytocin. Back before the stranding, people didn't rely on smart drugs like oxytocin so much, probably because they weren't so damn isolated. Me and my brother Igor, we got separated from our folks after the first void out. Shit was crazy. I was just a kid, but he was even younger. Too young to have to go through all that. Spending night after night holed up in those ruins, it was rough, but we had each other. Held each other close to stay warm, and it made things better. Docs tell you that's oxy doing its thing. The hormone the body releases when we touch each other. It's why mothers form bonds with their kids, when they hold them and other stuff like that. But with the comms networks not what they were, it's more dangerous than ever to go outside. Even when you got other people around, they don't seem too keen to make physical contact. A collective aversion due to an ingrained fear of BTs and void outs, or so I've been told. Add it all up, and you got yourself a people that's isolated, scattered, stressed out, and insecure. So we got no choice but to supplement our oxy levels. fill the void left by physical affection with chemical TLC. Pretty fucked up, am I right? I know we used to go to war over race and religion and all that back in the day, but that had to be better than living like this. Why planes and drones can't fly. Know what I wanted to be when I was a kid? An astronaut, believe it or not. Must be hard to imagine now. But back before the stranding, the skies were full of drones, airplanes, all kinds of crap zipping back and forth from continent to continent, some that even went up into outer space. But the chiral clouds put an end to all that. Nothing flies now. It all came crashing down, and my dreams with it. Damned clouds messing with flight systems somehow, don't ask me how. Eat up comm signals too. Which is how come long-distance signals can't get through anymore. That's why we got no idea what's happening in other countries. Set us back more than a century in that respect. People talk a lot about how the stranding sent us scrambling for the cities, severed the bonds between us, but it did more than that. It severed the land from the sky. Antimatter in storage. Everything went like clockwork, and we recovered all the antimatter. Performed the requested maintenance on the magnetic trap too. It should be a bit more stable now. I still can't believe those amateurs managed to get their hands on the stuff though. Apparently they stumbled across it while researching chiral clouds, though I suppose that kinda makes sense. Even before the Death Stranding, there was evidence that regular lightning storms could generate antimatter, and chiral ones are surely stranger. Sounds like they were able to capture it only once though, so that's something. Imagine if antimatter was easy to get hold of. Terrorists would have a field day. Anyway, we've got it stored safely now, and no one's the wiser. I just hope something good comes of it, that's all. You know what the alternative is, Lochner? The President's Ghost 1. This all happened years ago, so I can only hope enough time's passed that I won't get into trouble for talking about it. But believe it or not, people used to say that the President's official residence was haunted. Bear in mind that most born after the Death Stranding don't go in for any of that supernatural stuff. Why would they, when they know for a fact that BTs not only exist, but are out to get us? For folks like me, though, it used to be different. Even if you didn't really believe ghosts were real, or know anything about them, I don't know, call it a generational thing. I reckon most of the others who worked the detail would say the same if you put the screws to them. Now, here's where it gets a bit weirder. The ghost people whispered about, it was the President's. I saw her myself plenty of times. Pretty much every time I did a night shift, actually. There she was in the office or a corridor or something, just standing there. I tried calling out a couple of times, but whenever I did, she'd up and disappear. I'd say she, the ghost I mean, was in her 20s. But I'm not kidding when I tell you she looked like a younger President Strand. And before you ask, there's no way it could have been an intruder. Couldn't have been the President herself either. She was always sleeping whenever there was a sighting. And even if she hadn't been, no weird trick of the light could make her look that much younger. I know it sounds crazy, but after a while we couldn't help but believe it was a ghost. Either the President's, or that of someone else who was her spitting image. I knew I'd catch hell for it, but I just had to tell Di Hartman. It was a security concern for one thing, and for all we knew the President was sleepwalking or whatever. I was worried about her too, truth be told, and I thought it was my duty to report it. Let me tell you, I sure as hell didn't expect the response I got. He told me, matter of fact, that the ghost was actually the President's daughter, Amelie. I didn't even know the President had a daughter. Even he'd only found out recently, he said, and he'd been waiting for the right time to tell us. Apparently she'd suffered from something known as a locked-in syndrome from birth, had been hospitalized for a ridiculously long time. The President hadn't shared it with anyone except her closest confidants either. And then, after 20 years of treatment, Amelie had made a miraculous recovery. She was able to move around again. The President and her daughter had been living apart, but after her recovery, Amelie came to join her mother at the residence. It was kept on the need-to-know basis at first, just the head of the detail and some of the guards. I never told anyone else about it, until now. The President's Ghost 2. When did I first learn about Amelie? Let's see. It was about 10 years ago when the president first told me. There'd been rumors circulating among the president's security detail about a ghost in the official residence. Idle talk by bored soldiers, I figured. But then the president called me in and set the record straight. The ghost was her daughter, Amelie. The rumors had made their way to the president, and she was worried things might get out of hand. She explained how Amelie had been suffering from locked-in syndrome ever since she was born, but that she'd finally overcome it and was able to live a normal life again together with her mother. There was a complication, though. Amelie's soul had somehow been born on the beach. That's why her body suffered from the syndrome. I didn't really understand what she meant, but I understand when she ordered me to keep it a secret until her reconstruction plan was nearly complete. Until Sam and Amelie were ready to lead Bridges. The repatriate and the daughter with Doom's numbers like nobody else. She knew the separatists would be up in arms if they found out about the two of them. Dead Man. Bridge Babies. Interview. Look, I'm kind of new here at Bridges, so I don't know if any of this will be useful to you. Still, I'm happy to talk about BBs if that's what you want. They call me Dead Man, on account of my familiarity with the dead. Get it? We've always been on good terms, you see. Used to have regular little chats back when I worked in the morgue. Anyway, that's also the reason I work on BB maintenance and research, to learn more about those who are no longer with us. But I digress. Fact is, BBs were already being issued to our forces in the field before I joined Bridges. What's more, research into the little guys had already been conducted long ago, but no one took the plunge and put what they discovered to practical use. Still, what that did mean for us is that when Bridges wanted to build our own BBs, most of the work had already been done for us. We just needed to follow the instruction manual, so to speak. Which isn't to say that we have any idea how they work. Not how they can detect BTs or how they can connect this world to the other side. We still have much to learn about our little friends. But one thing is certain. Their continued study will lead us to a greater understanding of the Stranding, and of life and death itself. That much I can assure you. Well, I think that's about all I have to tell you today. Hopefully I'll have something new to share next time we chew the fat. See you around, I guess. BB echolocation. Dolphins use a sensory mechanism known as echolocation to keep track of both their fellow pod members and any potential prey. As the name suggests, they produce sounds which bounce off objects in return as echoes, allowing them to get an idea of their surroundings. Interesting in and of itself, of course. But what I find far more interesting is the recent research suggesting that BBs use a similar method to detect BTs. As you know, BB pods are designed to mimic the conditions inside a human womb, and are a key to preserving the BB's connection with this world and the next. Well, recent research now suggests that BBs are capable of producing something not unlike a dolphin's sound waves. These pulses travel through the amniotic fluid and out to the other side, bounce off BTs, and return as echoes, allowing a BB to ascertain the location of threats. Pretty cool, right? Fear as pleasure. Whether they realize it or not, the people of our fallen nation suffer greatly as a result of the separation and isolation we must all endure. That's why oxytocin supplementation is so vital. However, not all of us require it to survive. In fact, recent studies have shown something very interesting indeed. An increase in the number of people who regard fear not as a stressful experience to be avoided, but a pleasurable one to be sought out. In humans, the amygdala regulates the emotional response to fear and pleasure-inducing stimuli. Some scientists theorize that because these contradictory emotions are processed by the same region, we may have the capacity to convert one into the other. Conversely, with the two governed by different parts of the brain, such a transformation would be impossible. In an age where threats such as BTs, timefall, and terrorism abound, could the ability to experience fear as pleasure serve as a useful mutation? An adaptation, even? I don't see why not. No blue in the inverted rainbow. We humans are complex, multicellular organisms. 60 trillion cells inside each one of us, they say. How many of these cells need to die for us to consider a person dead? Are there any cells in particular which determine whether a person is alive or dead? These questions are academic, of course. The exact point of death can't be calculated using cell counts. On the other hand, no one can deny the existence of degenerative diseases that gradually destroy more and more cells, leaving the victim effectively half dead. And what about me? Most of my organs have been harvested from other people. They still work, of course, but could their original owner have been said to be alive? I really don't know. Incidentally, have you ever heard of a fun little experiment they once did with roundworms called C. elegans? These creatures are notable for glowing bright blue when exposed to UV light, but only when they die. It seems to be a reaction from the anthonylic acid within the organism, and it's known as death fluorescence. Yep, that's right. Blue is very much the color of death, it seems. Can it therefore really be a coincidence that there's no blue in an inverted rainbow? Timefall strengthens an area's connection to the beach. It has something to do with chiral particles becoming excited, I believe. In spaces connected to the beach, electromagnetic waves with a blue wavelength can travel easily through the seam, leaking out onto the beach. Some people think that's where the blue from the inverted rainbow goes. Who knows? The fact that blue has a strong connection to death, though, that much seems pretty inarguable. Human sacrifices under London Bridge. Before I joined Bridges, I watched an old movie called My Fair Lady. It's about a flower girl, Eliza, a real cockney from old London. She meets a professor, and he trains her to speak and act like a high-class lady. Anyway, I've heard that My Fair Lady might have something to do with London Bridge. You know the song, right? They start out trying to build it back up with wood and clay, and they finish with gold and silver. There was a reading of the film that said Eliza symbolized the bridge, or something along those lines. But that reminds me of a far more sinister theory, that the fair lady in the song is actually an immurement, a sacrifice buried alive in the foundations of the bridge to keep it standing. God only knows if there's any truth to it. Oh, and have you seen The Shape of Water? It's another movie with a heroine named Eliza. But this Eliza can't speak. She's mute. But it's not about teaching the girl to behave properly. It's just a good old-fashioned love story. If you get the chance, you should definitely check it out. What became of Deadman? I'm not connected to anyone or to anything. Not to my mother or the other side. Nothing. All that stuff about how I was created from pluripotent stem cells, that's just a cover story. I actually started life in a womb, albeit an artificial one. A human egg fertilized with human sperm. So far, so natural. But after that, technology took over. Any organs that were absent or lacking, I got from someone else. I've often wondered when I was technically born, given all that. The moment of fertilization? The moment I was taken from the incubator? Either way, there was nothing ordinary about it. I came into this world disconnected. No wonder I don't have a beach to call my own. Can you blame me for developing an obsession? After all, without a beach, death really is the end. Game over. Adios. Or so I thought. I recently discovered that I was mistaken about all that, thanks to Lou. I finally got to visit the beach. I may not have my own, but it seems that they're not closed to me after all, as long as I'm connected to someone. The beach is no more than a space between life and death. Lacking one doesn't mean you're not alive. I mean, I'm definitely alive. If anything, not having your own just means that you're already connected to everyone in this world. It's quite the epiphany, and it certainly put a great many worries of mine in perspective. Discovering America. Tell me, how much do you know about America? Not much is my guess. After all, it was already a wreck by the time either of us was born. Still, given that the whole purpose of Bridges is its reconstruction, I thought it'd be a good idea to learn a bit more about what we're trying to put back together. I imagine that you're aware of the fact that America was founded by European settlers. But do you know the name of the very first one? The man who discovered this place? Very good. Columbus is right. But let's not give the man too much credit. He apparently went to his grave thinking that America was some uncharted Asian island. It took another European explorer, Amerigo Vespucci, to realize that America was actually a whole new continent, completely unrelated to Asia. That's why it was named after him, you see. Having said that, there are those who question whether Vespucci deserved such an honor. There's a distinct lack of evidence that several of his alleged voyages to the New World even happened. Some think he lied in order to ensure that the new continent would be named after him and not Columbus. It was a hot topic of scholarly debate for centuries. Can you believe that? If you ask me, though, it really doesn't matter. Neither of them discovered America anyway. No one did. It was here all along, and already home to a great many people, too. The notion that a European discovered this place, or anyone else for that matter, is the biggest lie of all, don't you think? Di Hartman. Mules and Drone Syndrome. Bridges' primary objective is to rebuild America, and in order to rebuild, one of our main tasks is to reconnect cities and other settlements by re-establishing a delivery network. Back before the Death Stranding, the comms and delivery networks were what held society together. The whole thing was automated, AI managed, deliveries carried out by drone. The belief was that taking people out of the equation would revolutionize the whole system. But things didn't quite pan out that way. Instead, we started seeing cases of what would eventually be dubbed drone syndrome. It was too much for some folks to accept, leaving everything to machines and nothing for the common man. And indeed, the oxytocin deficiency and hormonal imbalances we confirmed seemed to back up that assessment. Humanity needed to be a part of the process. So laws were put in place, and we stepped back into the picture again. And then what happened? All the people put out of work by machines who got called up again convinced themselves society couldn't survive without them. And that brought on a whole new disorder. Delivery dependence syndrome, they called it. When the Death Stranding tore us apart, the delivery problem spiraled even further. It wasn't helped any by the fact that the chiral clouds prevented planes and drones from flying, which means we had to go back to relying completely on human couriers, whether we liked it or not. Eventually, delivering goods became all some lived for. They were obsessed, addicted, consumed by the desire to deliver. Over time, they turned into the mules we know and love today. Humanity's biggest problem? Logistics. War and famine have been inescapable parts of human life since the rise of our species. And while the fall of America hasn't changed this fundamental truth, it's fair to say that these issues aren't pressing concerns. Can you remember the last time you heard of a prepper dying of starvation? Much less someone in a not city. No one's fighting over water or oil or anything else. Which isn't to say that people don't occasionally run out of supplies, but that's almost never because of a real shortage. It's usually a problem with logistics. In fact, it was to address such problems that the president created Bridges and developed the chiral network. So yeah, no one's that desperate. Everybody's got enough for themselves, which is what led to the real problem. It's all too easy for people to become isolated from one another, and eventually forget that others even exist. People are free to live for themselves, for the moment, without a care for the future. The president understood this better than anyone, and I know just how much it pained her. The chiral network experiments between Central and Capital 1. Madam President, this will be your new office from today. The relocation of your official residence has also been completed, and the entire medical team has been brought along as well. Rest assured that information regarding this move has been shared on a need-to-know basis only. I understand that following the loss of New York, you wish to direct the reconstruction efforts from Central Knot City. But in light of recent separatist activity on the eastern seaboard, we no longer consider it safe. We will see to it that the people continue to believe you are in Central, and Bridges HQ will operate as normal. As per your orders, the network research teams and delivery systems management have all been covertly transferred here to Capital Knot City. While we are doing our utmost to expedite testing of the chiral network link between Central and Capital, while not neglecting your immediate medical needs, of course, this will be our base of operations for the next stage in the fight to rebuild America. The chiral network experiments between Central and Capital 2. Madam President, I'm happy to report that the trial run was a success. The connection between Central and Capital was established without incident. No chiral spikes or other irregularities. The Cupid functioned within acceptable parameters as well. There's still a lot of work to do. Chiral holograms, chiral printing, and data recovery have yet to be proven viable. But the confirmation that data can be sent via the chiral network is a huge step forward for the UCA. Our next step will be to use Cupids to establish connections with the other cities. Preparations for the second expedition are already underway. We're still trying to track Sam down, but as soon as he's back with us, he'll be given his new command. Mules and local porters. When people hear mules, they think junkies driven crazy by a desire to steal supplies we so desperately need to survive. Lucky for us, not all couriers are predisposed to this condition. Not all mules, in fact. They were professionals once, and some still are. Some even complete proper deliveries from time to time. Fragile Express has been known to use them, along with independent porters. For those at risk of losing it, They say the only way to stave off the syndrome is to join a distro organization with strong leadership and support to help keep you on the straight and narrow. Or you can strike out on your own, but that's no easy path. There's a reason guys who run solo have a reputation for being bulletproof. The Symbiotic Surveillance Society. In the world before the Stranding, the online service industry was huge, possibly the biggest of them all. People wanted their lives to be smooth and stress-free, and countless companies were happy to oblige. Customers would provide information about themselves, browsing history, purchasing history, that kind of thing. And in return they'd get a pleasant, personalized internet experience. It wasn't anything like the dystopian surveillance state people used to worry about in the 20th century. Predictive advertising, customized health tips, that sort of thing. The internet transformed our lives, and in many ways for the better. But not everyone was happy. People started to worry that it was encroaching on people's freedoms, that the price we paid for so much convenience was constant monitoring and an abdication of control. We had become members of a symbiotic surveillance society. Naturally, there are people who have similar concerns about the chiral network. There's a pretty sizable faction that wants nothing to do with it whatsoever. That said, I can't help but feel they're being naive. There's no such thing as a free lunch. Connectivity and convenience have to come at a price. What's more, the stakes are a whole lot higher nowadays. We're not talking about a simple trade-off between privacy and convenience. It's the network or bust, survival or extinction, as far as humanity is concerned. Likes secrete oxytocin. Before the Stranding, the whole world was connected. There were networks, social networks, we called them, that people used to communicate all the time. They shared all sorts of stuff through them. A random thought, a pretty picture, a home movie, you name it. And if you liked something that someone else had uploaded, you let them know by giving them, well, a like. Sounds weird, I know, but that's the truth. Eventually, someone ran tests on the users of these networks and discovered that receiving a like triggered a rush of oxytocin. The theory was that it stemmed from a sense of being acknowledged. Even though you couldn't see the person you were interacting with, it still felt like they were accepting you, praising you. And who wouldn't like that? But that same process is at the heart of the mule phenomenon. It's believed that an overdependence on the oxytocin rush provided by these kinds of interactions is a factor in porters going rogue. With this in mind, it wouldn't be wrong to characterize mules as oxytocin addicts. In essence, they are social animals at the mercy of validation. The situation after the first Death Stranding incident. There was a series of huge explosions. Well, not so much a series, they were simultaneous, worldwide. The global comms infrastructure was shot to hell, but we salvaged what we could and tried to make sense of what had happened. It didn't seem like much at the time, but it was a hell of a lot better than what we have now. Anyway, the government figured the whole thing was a terrorist attack at first. We'd been dealing with a lot of those back then, but it didn't take long to see that this was something else. The craters left by the blasts were bizarre. There was no rubble, no dust even, which led the scientists to rule out meteor strikes. There was trace neutron radiation, alpha rays, but we knew it wasn't nukes either. Some of the particles we detected we'd never even seen before. Chiralium, although we didn't know it at the time. The more we studied them, the more our scientists came to the same conclusion. These are the results of annihilation events. It was right about that time that chiral clouds started to form, and after that, all communications with the outside world went down for good. The terrorist view of bridges. The first expedition set off without any problems. Both the advance party and the rear guard are en route to the west coast as we speak. They haven't reported any troubles with terrorists and the like yet, but the further out they get, the greater the danger. There's a hell of a lot of separatists out there who want nothing to do with the UCA. Some more extreme than others, perhaps, but there's no denying where they stand. Seems like just yesterday it was only ideological differences, strongly held opinions at worst. But then the Chiralium started messing with people's heads, turning extremists into demons. Mules into Gestalt, and debate into violence. And now we're headed west into their territory. Invaders coming for their freedom. They're waiting for us, minds made up and guns in hand. Amelie and the others aren't looking for a fight. She's going to try to talk sense to people, convince them to join us. If all the cities sign on, our nation could rise again. No one wants to take anything from these people, only give them back what was lost. If only they could understand that. Locked-in syndrome. So it's been decided that Amelie will lead the expedition. In terms of talent and temperament, it was only ever going to be her, or Sam Strand. But we don't know where Sam is, which made the decision easy. Besides, there's no denying she's special. Amelie was born on the beach, or rather her physical body, her Ha, that was born into this world, while her spiritual essence, her Ka, was born on the beach. Medically speaking, they weren't sure what to call it. In the end, they settled on a diagnosis similar to what's known as locked-in syndrome, a condition where the subject is mentally present, but physically unable to move their body, except for their eyes sometimes. The president was able to communicate with Amelie's soul on the beach, but her body remained as it was when she was born. But after a time, thanks mainly to the president's efforts, she began to show progress. Amelie's physical and spiritual selves gradually came together, and her body began to develop normally. It was right about then that they realized she was also a doom sufferer, and began to ascertain her incredible abilities. She can transport herself physically to her own beach. Guess it makes sense. That world is more real to her than this one. She may have overcome her initial struggles, but she still spent most of her life on the other side. And over there, time stands still, which is why even now she looks like she's in her 20s. Eventually, the president came to feel that her daughter had been through enough. From that point onward, all communication with Amelie would be via hologram, even during the expedition. She wouldn't be in direct contact for most of the team. It's not a bad plan, to be fair. It'll help keep her out of reach of terrorists for a start. Designing the UCA flag. Bridget and I had a discussion about the UCA flag. She wanted something that was based on the old American design. You know the one, 50 stars and 13 stripes, states and colonies. A classic symbol of national pride. The president wanted people to remember that pride as we went about our rebuilding process. But I thought differently. The old American flag was redesigned 26 times. Every time a new state joined the Union, they had to add another star. It was easy to believe the country would keep on growing forever, end up taking over the world. Hell, most people believe just that. Good old manifest destiny, the mantra used to justify countless atrocities centuries ago. You can believe, I told the president, we damn well better not carry on that particular legacy. Freedom, liberty, equality, those principles should be enshrined and never denied. The stars of the UCA aren't states, but individuals. Each with value, each a part of the greater whole. That's what our flag and the UCA represent. Bridget's necklace. I remember it like it was yesterday. I was nervous as hell, but underneath there was a strange kind of euphoria. Not unlike the high I felt when I first went into combat years before. A nameless grunt, stumbling around, surrounded by vets who had seen it all before. Not that I'd stay nameless for long. Turned out I was a born survivor. And before I knew it, I earned myself a reputation in an audience with President Bridget Strand, several months after her inauguration. She looked me straight in the eye and told me that from that day on I answered to her. We were going to rebuild America together, she said. It may sound daunting and intimidating, but I knew even then that wasn't her intent. She spoke like someone who'd lived a dozen lifetimes, who'd made the most of each and every one. After she said her piece, she smiled and took a step closer to me. Her necklace, a simple Y-shaped thing, caught the light, and for an instant I saw something impossible. The necklace was glowing, radiant, spreading across her body, chest to abdomen. Like something was being drawn out of her Ha, I thought at the time, though I couldn't tell you why. Every time I saw her with that necklace, I remembered the light. It was only much later that Bridget told me about her daughter, Amelie, and how it had been a virgin birth. Die Hardman's Confession. Bridget's BB Experiments. Part 1. As Deadman established in the course of his independent inquiries, the BB experiments were classified and carried out in an atmosphere of great secrecy. Deadman also asserts, correctly, that BBs were recognized as both media for chiral communications and as essentially human sacrifices. Bridges 1 was issued with BB pods, some of which found their way into the hands of terrorists out west, who adapted the technology for their own ends. This is further evidenced by the fact that the pods currently in use by the terrorists are identical to those issued to Bridges 1 members. We can only assume that they were stolen. In any event, the true nature of BBs remained a closely guarded secret that we could not and would not disclose to anyone. This was the case from the very beginning, which is why following the Death Stranding, government officials not in the know were certain that it was an act of terror. The actual cause, of course, was a cesarean section performed on a brain-dead pregnant woman. As you'll have heard, the surgeon who performed the operation saw a BT at the time. Bridget, who had just been inaugurated as president, believed that BBs could be used to prove to everyone that BTs did indeed exist. By dragging this invisible threat into the light, that people might come together again, instead of continuing to drift apart. There were terrible risks, she knew. But if America was to be whole once more, BTs couldn't remain hidden. If only we knew what would happen when we revealed them to the world. I'm sorry, this is taking a lot out of me. Can we pick it up a little later? Di Hartman's Confession, Bridget's BB Experiments, Part 2. Sorry about before, I just needed a break. I'm ready to continue if you like. The BB experiments continued after the stranding, even though the official line was that they'd been shut down. That's how we came to realize that BBs weren't just a means with which we could see BTs. They have the power to connect us to the other side. Power like that could help us make America whole again. Surely. That was our thinking at the time, anyway. Not all BBs were created equal, though. One in particular had potential that was off the charts. Yeah, you know which one I'm talking about. It was chosen to serve as the first sacrifice, but I didn't have the stomach to see it through. I couldn't do it. Not to his kid. Couldn't forsake that personal connection to save the world, I guess. So I tried to arrange a rescue. I betrayed my president, betrayed my country. Because of me, both Cliff and his BB ended up dead. It must have weighed on Bridget too. How could it not? Why else would she have taken in that little BB who died and came back to life as her own son? Another line to comfort and console us. But there's no pretending it didn't happen. Not after Sam told me about the flashbacks he experienced when hooking up to his own BB. Not after I realized Cliff had returned. Realized he wasn't looking for a bridge baby, but his baby, his own flesh and blood. And now you know why I've devoted my life to the UCA. It's the only way I can begin to atone for what I've done. Di Hartman's background, 1. U.S. Special Forces enlistment record, John Blake McClane. Name, John Blake McClane. Nationality, American. McClane scored above average in physical and mental aptitude tests. His talents were recognized by Captain Clifford Unger, who elected to give McClane special training. Under Captain Unger's command, McClane took part in several missions, during which he earned a reputation for survival against all odds, as evidenced by his nickname, Di Hartman. Di Hartman's background, 2. The following information concerning John Blake McClane's death was recovered following the activation of the Chiral Network. It is presented without comment or interpretation. All personal data and official documentation concerning the subject indicate that he is deceased. However, even after reconstruction and collection of data from additional sources, we were unable to confirm cremation of the subject's corpse. Unfortunately, recovery of incinerator records from the time in question has so far proved difficult, on account of the incident's proximity to the Death Stranding. While the possibility that the corpse underwent necrosis and subsequently transformed into a BT cannot be ruled out entirely, the probability is exceedingly low. In other words, there is no evidence that the subject has, in fact, died. Significant portions of the subject's personal data appear to have been discreetly modified and expunged, but forensic study has led us to the discovery of a living individual who bears a striking resemblance to the deceased. Subsequent analysis of genetic samples do indeed confirm a DNA match for this Di Hartman. End of tape 1. Start of tape 2. Fragile. Preppers. Interview. When I was a little girl, my father told me preppers were people who decided long ago that they couldn't trust their nation to be there for them anymore. That the bonds between us had grown weak long before the Death Stranding. We once had a network spanning the whole wide world that could send items from anywhere to anywhere and connect anyone with anything. But still, we were isolated. Still, we were alone. Some liked it that way and even wanted more. They wanted walls around their borders, wanted to turn away refugees and outsiders. Some even wanted new nations all their own. They began to see the state as an enemy of their freedom, not a protector of it. The ones most far gone, they didn't trust the country to defend them if something went really wrong. War, terrorism, natural disaster, you name it. So they built shelters and stocked full of supplies in preparation for the worst. And then the worst happened. The Death Stranding. America ceased to exist, and their shelters became their homes, where they would live and they would die. But while they prepared, they hadn't prepared to live there forever, which is why they wound up relying on us couriers so heavily. My father and I didn't want to go back to the old America. We didn't want a country that pushed people apart. We wanted one that brought them together, that allowed them to support one another. And that was what we tried to work toward. Cryptobiotes interview. We call these bugs cryptobiotes. They were recorded in reference books and databases back before the Death Stranding, but nobody ever thought to give them a proper classification, so cryptobiotes they stayed. They're named for the process of cryptobiosis, which means hidden life. When environmental conditions get too harsh or resources too scarce, cryptobiotes can shut down their metabolic processes and enter an almost death-like state in order to survive. Tardigrades and sleeping chironomids are capable of this too, but cryptobiotes are on a whole other level. They can survive anything and anywhere, even on the beach or in the seam. And they aren't capable of prolonging only their own lives. Humans who eat them acquire a limited resistance to timefall too. You won't find them lying around just anywhere though. You need to know where to look. Not many people even knew they existed until recently, so next to no research has been done. But now that their beneficial properties have been recognized, I'm willing to bet they'll play an important role in helping us to understand the beach, the Death Stranding, and everything else. Fragile's father and Fragile Express. My father came up with the name Fragile Express before I was born. The US was Swiss cheese back then. All the voidouts had left craters as far as the eye could see. People were losing their minds looking for a way out. They thought the government would have their back, but it was gone. All the systems, all the gears that kept the world turning, smashed to bits in a matter of seconds. When everything you know breaks, it's hard not to break yourself. Before our new network, there was an old one. The whole nation was online 24/7. Cameras and microphones everywhere, watching and listening and recording. There was a strange sort of comfort in that, people said. A certainty that someone, somewhere, would know if you were in trouble. But after the stranding, that all vanished into the ether. No one was looking out anymore. No one was coming to save you. A lot of folks died waiting, before the rest caught on and took matters into their own hands. My father was one of the latter. He'd been working for a private logistics company, and he and some friends figured they were in a position to bring people supplies and repair vital infrastructure Americans used to rely on to survive. They were builders, men and women who understood the value of what was lost and wanted to reclaim it. My father and them really believed that they could get it all back, bit by bit, and make us whole, make us America. It was a precious, fragile dream, like so much back then. But if we nurtured it, if they stayed true, he knew it could be all ours again. People, ideas, connections, all so fragile. The USA was nothing more than a network of people, and the connections between them. No wonder it broke apart so easily. But everything that's worth something is fragile. That's why I was given this name. My father's not with us anymore, but the bond between us remains, fragile though it is. What became of Fragile? I've been thinking a lot about my father recently. I like to think he'd be happy if he was here. Now that Sam's made us whole again, he'd have his America back. Not that things are perfect, far from it. The Death Stranding's still a thing, and people aren't free to go where they please. So the UCA's prospects don't look too great. But I'm not going to stand by and let it fall apart. After all, it's a symbol of everything my father held dear. Freedom and community. It's bigger than any one of us. Bigger than all of us still standing. We're only here because of those who came before. My father and everyone else back through the generations. I appreciate that more these days, I suppose. And I want to honor the people who made me who I am. That's why I've joined Bridges. I've spent too long wrestling with the past, obsessed with getting revenge on Higgs. But the past can't be changed. All I can do now is build upon it and help deliver everyone a brighter future. Fragile Express is back in business. My mother's Misanga. My mother abandoned us when I was 12. That's what my father told me anyway. But it doesn't feel like something that happened to me. It's a story about someone else. Their tragedy, not mine. I hardly remember her anyway. The only thing that connects us now is our matching Misangas. My father told me she was a strong woman, that she sacrificed everything for a dream of America, a land full of hope where we'd live free. Does that mean she sacrificed us too? I asked him once. A heart can only bleed so much. Gotta harden yours some if you want to stay unbroken. That's what he said. A mantra, or something like one. Her words to live by when the going gets tough. He said I'd understand one day. I don't know about that. I hope he's right. Hartman. Timefall. Interview. Timefall was first recorded when the Death Stranding occurred. And despite all the years that have passed since then, we're no closer to understanding how or why it accelerates the passage of time for the objects and organisms it touches, or why it immediately turns to ordinary water having done so. Some researchers have gone as far as to posit this process as stealing time. As for why timefall is observed only in certain places, all that we know for certain is that it's somehow affected by local chiral concentrations. This is merely a hunch, but something in me suspects that the Death Stranding may have warped our perception of the passage of time. Not that that's necessarily a bad thing, you understand. We humans can conceive of our own deaths, and even of the possibility of a place beyond death. Yes, we have the capacity to conceptualize the future, an evolutionary advantage which aided our development as a species. Well, what if the timefall has given us a new supercharged version of this essential ability? One that will take us to the next stage of our evolution. Perhaps we wouldn't need to hole ourselves up in the knot cities. Perhaps, in time, the Death Stranding will come to be seen as the phenomenon that saved our species. Exciting thoughts, I'm sure you'll agree. I, for one, can't wait to set out on our journey. Who knows what awaits us? Necrosis and the ancient Egyptian view of life and death. The Egyptians believed that we humans were composed of two elements, the Ha and the Ka, the body and the soul. Various texts expound upon their nature in detail, but perhaps it's simplest to conceive of them as follows. The soul is that which joins with the child in the womb and gives life to the body. It is also that which departs the body upon death. Ergo, the body is simply a vessel. Should the soul return to it, it will live again. This is precisely what is observed in near-death experiences. A soul separated, albeit briefly, from its body. The Egyptians believed death not to be an instantaneous change of state, but a process by which the soul moves from one realm to another. But this process itself has changed thanks to the Death Stranding. In the normal order of things, when death occurs, the soul vacates the body and passes into the seam. From there it transitions to the beach, and only then onto the world of the dead. But after the stranding, a soul that has already made its journey to the beach may attempt to return to its body in this world. It was hard to believe at first, but the process of necrosis provided proof of this phenomenon that was difficult to deny. This is why it is imperative that we burn the bodies of the dead. The body must be destroyed to sever the link with the soul. Only then will the soul be free to journey to the world beyond. Chiral symmetry. The word chiral comes from the Greek kia, meaning hand. Compare your left with your right. They seem similar in both size and shape, yes? Now face your palms away from you and place one hand over the other. Their shapes do not overlap exactly, but place your palms together and voila, a match. It is as if one hand is the mirror image of the other. But again, if you were to actually compare the mirror image of your hand to itself, we would see that the two are not identical. This is the essence of chirality, a state in which the mirror image of a shape does not match the original. It has been theorized that BTs are mirror images of ourselves. Were we to exist in the same point in time and space, our shapes, as it were, would not overlap neatly onto one another, save in reflection, and when our particles meet their opposites, a void-out occurs. The new form of communication we have devised utilizes beaches, which are akin to mirrors, reflecting this world and the other, and is the term chiral network. Chiralium. Interview. You would like to know more about chiralium? Well, wouldn't we all? I'm happy to present the latest theories, but you must be aware that this is all they are. Theories. Chiralium, like dark matter, was born along with our universe, and has existed ever since. Just not in a dimension we were able to perceive. Until now. It is the beach that gives us access to that dimension, and with it, knowledge of chiralium's existence. Not just the knowledge of it, of course. We have since observed it coalescing into crystalline form, and recorded measurable physical and mental effects on individuals exposed to it. It has reshaped our understanding of reality, and proven instrumental in the formulation of the multiverse theory of beaches. Chiral matter is not affected by the passage of time. As far as these particles are concerned, none has elapsed since the Big Bang. Little wonder they escaped our notice for so long, until a man and BT first came together in Void-Out and left nothing but chiralium in their wake. Many of these claims are yet to be verified, but I believe that this is a fair summary of the scientific community's current consensus on the matter. No pun intended. I shall soon be heading west with the first expedition, and I look forward to learning more about chiralium and its connections to the beach along the way. Chiral contamination 1. Chiral contamination is the result of prolonged exposure to chiral radiation, which is emitted by chiralium, a substance discovered at the same time as the beach. Prolonged exposure can significantly impact physical and mental health. The effects are not dissimilar from those observed in individuals exposed to extremely high levels of stress, levels which can be fatal even. Such traumatic experiences can alter hormonal secretions, impair immune response, contribute to heart failure, and induce strokes. The most common symptom of chiral contamination is poor sleep quality, due to vivid nightmares. If left unchecked, however, it can quickly progress to a more advanced stage, in which the aforementioned issues may be observed. The potential impact on an individual's mental health cannot be understated. The resulting hormonal imbalances frequently lead to heightened destructive impulses toward the self and others. Those dominated by such urges are named homodemons, the mad ones. In the case of some porters, such as mules, impaired memory and judgment has led them to develop an irrational obsession with their profession, hence the Homo Gestalt moniker. While it should be feasible and preferable for most individuals to avoid chiral contamination at all costs, there are those with a demonstrated resistance who need not be so cautious. I speak, of course, of DOOMS sufferers. Chiral contamination 2. Chiral contamination can be alleviated using similar methods to those used to alleviate stress. Increasing oxytocin secretion through contact with other people, administering smart drugs, and so forth. In recent years, however, a hormone dubbed lyxin, known to mitigate the effects of chiral contamination, while also restoring basic physical and mental acuity, has attracted a great deal of attention from the scientific community. Unlike oxytocin, cannot be administered externally. It is secreted within the body, but only in response to external stimuli. It is said to be the hormone principally responsible for the positive feelings that occur when one achieves a goal, enjoys success, receives praise or gratitude, or any other form of like from a fellow human being. The discovery of beaches and the concept of death. With the discovery of the beach, the fundamental truth of death was upended. I doubt you will find many who would deny this. Alas, we can say little with confidence in any objective or scientific capacity, for our understanding of this new realm remains in its infancy and is ever evolving, much like our understanding of the universe as a whole. Perhaps the closest thing we have to a working explanation of the beach relates to the conception of multiverses. But I digress. The beach is arguably both a concept and a reality. A discrete beach is influenced by the mind of the associated individual, and therefore linked to them irrevocably. This is why we have so energetically pursued the psychological, psychoanalytical, and neuroscientific angles when attempting to create a unified theory of the Death Stranding, the beach, and related phenomena. There was a fad a while back in which subjects underwent counseling in order to learn more about their beaches, and in doing so gain a greater understanding of the nature of death. Doom sufferers in particular provided excellent opportunities for study. An interesting theoretical question arose during that period. If a person's beach was a product of their consciousness, might animals have beaches as well? A conundrum on the surface perhaps, but one quickly resolved. Only human corpses undergo necrosis and become BTs, which proves somewhat conclusively that only a human can possess a beach. And yet this begs another question. If all that is required is consciousness akin to that of a human, could an AI have a beach, an android? I, for one, do not believe so. Why? Because the function of our beaches is to connect the world of the living and the dead. If an entity was never born, has not truly lived, and will never know death, surely it cannot have a beach. The Evo Devo Unit. Interview. It seems a rather significant breakthrough has been achieved back at headquarters. They've successfully integrated an Evo Devo unit into a chiral printer. In case you're not familiar with the term, Evo Devo refers to evolutionary development biology. Your genes, mouse genes, dinosaur genes, the genes of every living being are virtually identical, and yet we develop into such radically different organisms. Thus, a question arises. Why did such disparate life arise from the self-same building blocks? Evo Devo was the field of study that sought to solve that mystery, to lay bare the secrets of evolution. Before the advent of Evo Devo, it was thought that in order to reconstruct a dinosaur, we would require a sample of its DNA. However, thanks to this technology's ability to extrapolate from existing data, we could, with the correct stimulus, grow a dinosaur from the DNA of any living organism. We could, in essence, recreate the process by which dinosaurs evolved from primeval life forms. An Evo Devo unit applies these same principles to the problem of information and object reconstruction. With the help of the chiral network, we may take incomplete data, and indeed incomplete objects, and reproduce their complete forms. This data can then be fed into a chiral printer, and voila, partial data yields a finished product. The tech isn't viable for everyday use just yet, but when it is, it will be of incalculable benefit to our research and bring our reconstruction efforts forward by a matter of decades. Higgs particles. Higgs Moynihan. Oh yes, I know the name. The former leader of a private courier organization, as I recall, which served a large region in the West, and was instrumental in providing continued support to the people living there. But as we were so far apart, Bridges struggled to maintain any measure of influence over their operations. It probably didn't help that the separatist movement has always enjoyed strong support in that territory. In the wake of growing violence by the demons, we were shocked to learn that Higgs himself was at their head. What to make of this strange development? Why on earth would a man who once commanded a group devoted to American Reconstructionism suddenly pledge himself to the cause of American destruction? His name only compounds the insult. Have you heard of the Higgs particle, also known as the God particle? It's associated with the Higgs field, that which gives all other particles their mass. Without it, atoms would fly apart, and matter would not exist as we know it. In other words, its very presence prevents mindless destruction. Cosmic irony indeed. Chiral clouds and timefall. Why do chiral clouds form? Why does timefall occur? And why does it herald the manifestation of BTs? These are questions we still struggle to answer. As we now know, BTs are beings formed of something akin to antimatter. Their first appearance coincided with the Death Stranding. Prior to that point, it is believed that there is very little in the way of antimatter present in our world at all. But we've since learned that this was far from the case. For even before the stranding, antimatter was all around us. I discovered a scientific paper on the subject titled On Antimatter and Clouds. According to the paper, the gamma radiation generated by lightning strikes can trigger the formation of positrons, and indeed, particles of antimatter can be detected inside regular rain clouds. The mechanisms by which they are formed is not fully understood, but the mere existence of this phenomenon is enough to suggest something intriguing. Chiral clouds contain chiralium, yes? Well, what would happen if gamma radiation were to act upon them in the same way as it does in regular clouds? Could chiralium, excited by gamma radiation, exacerbate minute distortions in space-time somehow, loosening the seams that connects us to our beaches? And if so, when the excited chiralium mixes with timefall and descends to the ground below, could the entire region beneath the clouds become much more strongly connected with the beach as a result? This could well explain why BTs appear in areas prone to timefall. Furthermore, if the antimatter we previously thought did not even exist in any measurable quantity on Earth were in fact present in such commonplace phenomena as the very clouds above us, would this not lend credence to the theory that BTs, beaches, the world of the dead, all of these things may have existed long before the stranding? Too much of a theoretical leap? Perhaps. I do not deny our world changed, drastically and irrevocably. Nevertheless, could it not be that the Death Stranding was merely the clap of thunder that brought this great change to our attention, and not the change itself? Giant BTs. Interview. The following assessment is based entirely on eyewitness testimony. Be advised that none of these claims have been independently verified. There are several types of BT, and the means by which they interact with the living also varies. Some BTs actively seek out human beings, while others attempt to draw us towards them. Still others are capable of consuming their prey, causing a void out in the process. It is not only their roles and behavior that set them apart, however. Their physiology is also different. Moreover, we have anecdotal evidence suggesting the existence of some truly enormous BTs. Curiously, however, these do not appear to have umbilical cords. Giant BTs are comprised of the consolidated ka of multiple deceased individuals. As a result, the connection between each individual and their beach is lost, which is why the resulting BT does not manifest an umbilical cord. That's the theory, at any rate. Unfortunately, I doubt we'll be able to learn anything more about these entities until the chiral network is online, a day that can't come soon enough. The history of the Odradek. Does the name Sigmund Freud mean anything to you? He was a famous psychologist, the most famous of them all, perhaps, but I digress. Freud formulated one of his most famous theories after observing his grandson playing with a spool of thread. The boy would throw the spool into the bed, thus ensuring that he could not see it anymore. He would then wind the thread in his hand, gradually drawing the spool back towards him until it became visible again. He repeated this process several times. It was apparently a game he played whenever his mother was elsewhere. Freud proposed that the process of concealing and rediscovering the spool was a coping mechanism, a way in which the boy could put his mind at ease. You see, the boy was in control of the spool. He could make it disappear and reappear at will. This helped him to comprehend his mother's absence, not as something sudden or irrational, but as something controlled, and therefore not a cause for concern. A novelist named Franz Kafka later coined a term for this spool of thread, Odradek. However, he conceived it as an object capable of speech and autonomous movement, a mysterious being, neither dead nor alive. The Odradeks we use are perhaps not so different. These interfaces through which we experience our BB's perception of the surroundings are not unlike spools of thread, a connection between our world and the other side, the living and the dead, human and BB. BTs come in all shapes and sizes. Although eyewitness testimony has led us to identify several types of BTs, perhaps the most interesting of all are the entities which may not be BTs at all. The subjects in question bear some resemblance to jellyfish, and are visible even to those without dooms. While we have little information concerning their physiology and behavior, upon detecting the presence of a human, they will attack by rapidly approaching their target before exploding. Disturbing to say the least, especially given that they appear to be impervious to small arms fire. Though perhaps we can take comfort in the fact that they do not seem capable of causing void-outs. Our best guess at the moment is that these are a subspecies of BT, one that does not form as a result of a human death. Beyond that, they are a complete mystery. Perhaps when the repatriate Sam Porter chooses to join Bridges, we can attempt to develop a means of dealing with this new threat. In the meantime, however, we can but continue to study and speculate. Near-death experience. Until relatively recently, death could only be studied from the perspective of an external observer, as the experience of one's own death couldn't be communicated to another. A collaborative investigation of the phenomenon was fundamentally impossible. But through the examination of subjects in near-death states and the cataloging of their experiences, we have at least been able to bring the scientific method to bear on this most final of frontiers. Even those in a state of so-called brain death exhibit signs of consciousness. What could this possibly mean? Moreover, why do some on the brink of death report out-of-body experiences? Furthermore, why do so many of those who have such experiences describe the same sensations of being beckoned towards a distant light? Many had argued that these commonalities were evidence of an objective reality, of a place beyond life. If nothing else, they at least suggested that death was not an instantaneous change of states, but a process. The beach has since proven much of this beyond a doubt, and the dead rising again as BTs through necrosis demonstrates this process in action. The place beyond life is no longer a theoretical possibility. Its existence must be taken as incontrovertible fact. Cave paintings and stencils. Cave paintings provide an invaluable window into the lives of our ancestors, how they lived, what they experienced. Some have been preserved here on our continent, although most have sadly been lost in void-outs. The oldest cave paintings of all are believed to date back 64,800 years, or more. But all of these are, or perhaps were, in Europe. What's become of them, I wonder? Have they too been obliterated in annihilation events? If not, are the caves containing them now infested with BTs? Does Europe still exist, even? One cannot help but worry that these vital records have been forever lost to us. But I digress. These first paintings were likely made by the Neanderthals. They were crude depictions of creatures, such as deer, bison, and horses, interspersed with stenciled outlines of large hands. Some assert that these are the signatures of primeval painters. But could they not also be depictions of BT handprints? Could our ancient relatives have been trying to tell us something, or issue a warning? Or is that perhaps one flight of fancy too far? BTs and void-outs. The following conclusions are largely derived from a handful of eyewitness accounts. While I would advise anyone to take them with a grain of salt, I still believe they are worth sharing. BTs pursue their prey through a multi-step process. In the first, they begin searching for a target. The handprints left behind is evidence of this behavior. Upon detection, one or more BTs will attempt to seize their target and drag it towards a much larger entity. To clarify, however, a void-out does not occur at the point of contact between the giant and the human, but only once the human has been subsumed into the giant's body. We think this may be because this is the only place where antimatter is present within the entity. It goes without saying that BTs are entirely different from any creature that is of this world, and we have much to learn about them still. One thing is for certain, however. We must come to understand them, else we may never overcome the existential threat that they pose. Neanderthals are not extinct. Both Neanderthals and Homo sapiens are believed to share a common ancestor in the form of Homo heidelbergensis, but there are clear differences between the two. Neanderthals were brutish and brawny, well equipped to hunt larger animals and survive in colder climates, whereas Homo sapiens were slender-limbed and only capable of hunting smaller prey. But as millennia passed, Homo sapiens learned to create tools and hunt in packs. The Neanderthals, who actually had larger brains than the Homo sapiens, also fashioned tools of their own, but these were crude in comparison and developed little over 200,000 years. Perhaps because these simple-minded beings favored small family units, so that even if a breakthrough occurred, it was unlikely to be shared with others. This isolation, more than any other factor, seems to have led to their decline. Homo sapiens, meanwhile, conceived religion, with which large numbers of individuals could be bound together in service to a common cause. Strength in numbers also made the communities more resistant to famine and other calamities. In other words, Homo sapiens grew stronger through interpersonal connections by creating what came to be called society. If we persist in our divided state, we risk losing this hard-won unity and dooming ourselves to the Neanderthals' fate. We will dwindle and die, apart and alone. But history holds another intriguing lesson. Homo sapiens did not disdain Neanderthals. The two species even intermingled on occasion. Our DNA retains vestiges of our ancient cousins even now. So you see, while a species itself may disappear, its genetic legacy may yet endure. Hartmann's theory of evolution. The evolution of life on Earth could be described as the evolution of consciousness. When the first vertebrates clambered out of the oceans and onto the land, their consciousness expanded to process the new realm that lay before them. But their development did not end there. Their eyes moved from their flanks to their fronts, that they might comprehend the depth of the world. Mammals formed groups, increasing their chances of survival. Eventually they came together in communities, and then larger societies. In order to preserve and maintain these structures, humans developed a perception of time, and in order for societies to outlast the lifespan of the individual, we conceived of an afterlife and a future beyond ourselves. Alas, the Death Stranding threatens to undo all our progress. Consider the chiral network, which incorporates the beach, where time does not exist. Or consider timefall, which rapidly accelerates the degradation of that which it comes into contact with. How can our sense of time, honed over millions of years, remain intact when we must cope with such irrational phenomena? Yet that is but the tip of the proverbial iceberg. We are growing apart, retreating into isolation, gradually losing our place within society. I would even go so far to say that our conceptions of reality are under threat. How could they not be, when our very eyes deny the invisible BT that stands before us? The stranding has warped our consciousness in every sense. If the evolution of life on Earth is indeed akin to the evolution on consciousness, then what is happening now is undeniably a regression, is it not? There is one caveat, of course. Some of us are now far more aware of death than we ever were. That is what Dooms has given us. For me, therefore, Dooms is not merely a biological change. I prefer to think of it as a means by which I have achieved a new form of consciousness. Furthermore, I hope and believe that this new awareness of the other side is humanity's trump card as we seek to defeat the Death Stranding. Umbilical cords in Devonian-era fossils. An article from an old scientific journal was recently brought to my attention. It predates the Death Stranding and concerns the discovery of a 300-million-year-old fossil, one from the Devonian era, to give the period its proper name. It was a fossil of a fish, and in its womb was a child connected to its mother by an umbilical cord, no less. The species, Matripiscus attenboroughi. It's a placoderm, an extinct class of armored marine creatures that used to live in seas the world over. Unfortunately, most were wiped out during the Devonian era, right around the time of the second of the Big Five, in fact. As you may be aware, one of the key foci of my research is the link between creatures with umbilical cords and mass extinctions. Once this area is connected to the chiral network, it is my hope that we will be able to piece together more data that will help us learn more about the link between umbilical cords and the Death Stranding. Bridgmanite in the Earth's mantle. Bridgmanite is a mineral found in the lower part of the Earth's mantle. It was named in the honor of the Nobel Prize-winning physicist Percy Williams Bridgman. Bridgmanite comprises 38% of the Earth, but because it's only found deep beneath the surface, it's very difficult to acquire any samples for analysis. As luck would have it, however, a material with the same properties was discovered inside a meteorite before the Death Stranding. Of course, meaning that a certain amount of research has already been conducted into this mysterious mineral, after a fashion. From this, a theory has been advanced positing that Bridgmanite contains a certain amount of carhelium that was absorbed into the mineral at the moment of the Earth's creation. If this theory is true, then it may go some way to explaining the curious tar that has been observed to bubble up from below the ground. Furthermore, if carhelium does indeed come from the other side, as we suspect, then it would follow that it has been linked to ours from the very beginning. In essence, the heart of the planet could be likened to the world of the dead. How appropriate, given that Chiral closes and binds us to the surface forevermore. None may ascend to heaven when they die, for our final destination lies beneath our feet. Ashes to ashes, as they say. About the Dreamcatcher. There is a psychological framework which posits that the human personality is comprised of various strands. Our inner mind, our outer character, each is a strand, a thread, made up of yet smaller threads, which intertwine with others to make us who we are. And in nurturing each strand, we become better people, and inure ourselves against psychological harm. Or so the theory goes. As odd as it may sound, this is not an entirely dissimilar concept to the one which lies behind that most ubiquitous of Ojibwe artifacts, the Dreamcatcher. You've seen them before, yes? A woven web of threads said to protect the mind from harm by trapping nightmares, thus ensuring that only pleasant dreams pass through. It's no coincidence that these charms came to symbolize the pan-Indian movement of the 20th century. The many and varied Native American tribes strove to set aside their differences in order to foster a group identity, a singular dream. As such, it came to symbolize what made them one people, what united them. In essence, strands can represent that which makes us who we are, that which differentiates us from what we are not, and the bonds we share with one another. Quipus. Quipu means a knot in the Quechua language. Objects given this name were used in ancient Incan society to record and transmit information. And yes, Amelie just happens to wear one. The Inca would pass quipu from one place to another, via a network of messengers known as chaquis. You might be surprised at the complexity that can be communicated through a simple system of knots, and not merely numerical data. It is said that whole histories could be contained in these intricate webs. Some theories suggest that they were ascribed magical properties too. Certain combinations of knotted numbers were thought to encourage the dead to sleep peacefully in their graves, for example. We see that the quipu is a tool for communication, storytelling, and rituals. About Sam's return. Sam has returned, safe and sound. It had been about a month since he departed for Amelie's beach. 30 days of relentless searching for us, though for him it must have felt like an eternity. I cannot imagine the isolation and despair he must have been forced to endure, a suffering known only by Amelie and Bridget. Sam has told us about the extinction entity, and how it granted humanity a reprieve, but beyond that he is reluctant to speak. Well, we shall not put any pressure on him. Frankly, I expect we would struggle to comprehend anything else he tells us. Suffice it to say that the last stranding has been avoided, even if its precursor has forever reshaped our world. Thousands and thousands of years from now, should intelligent life walk the earth and find our fossils, they will likely conclude that Homo sapiens died out in the 6th extinction. Perhaps, if we are lucky, they may even find records we leave behind. Still, we cannot hope to guess how much they will understand about who we were. After all, their intelligence will not be like ours. Theirs will be a different understanding of the world, of the universe. Different forms of existence, different conception of what it is to be alive, These invariably lead to different conceptions of what it is to die, but it matters not if they never understand who we were. All that matters, in my opinion at least, is that they know that we were here. What became of Hartman? Countless trips to the beach every single day, each spent searching in vain for my wife and daughter. Such has been my existence, my fate, if you will. After all, if each person's beach is their own, and the worlds each of us inhabit posthumously are also unique. If that's the case, then even death shall not reunite me with my family. That is why I must search beach after beach after beach for any trace, any clue, anything that might lead me back to them. Death is not the end, after all, and the past is never dead. Indeed, it's not even past. I have decided to give up my quest, for I come to realize it will change nothing. I must move on with my life. And as a matter of fact, I already have. I've met someone. Her name is Samantha Spade. I call her Sam, a spirited Hispanic woman. You can imagine how frustrating it is to live in 21-minute intervals. Speaking of which, an ageless president. There is one rather trivial question that has caused me a great deal of consternation. Bridget was verging on the elderly, yet her appearance was that of someone much, much younger. Indeed, she remained remarkably youthful until her cancer began to take its toll. Sam has a photograph of Bridget from only 10 years ago, in which she still looks like a young woman. Some have posited the theory that it was her strength of will, her desire to rebuild America, that kept her young. Mind over matter. I suppose there may be some truth to that claim. I, however, suspect that the secret to Bridget's youthful appearance is to be found on the beach. Deadman was good enough to bring me her umbilical cord, unbeknownst to Sam, of course, and I was able to confirm that it retained a connection to the beach. This is almost certainly related to why she did not age at the normal rate. Of course, we have no way of truly understanding this link between Bridget and the beach, or how long it existed. Similarly, we have no idea when she was born. We can only surmise that Bridget's connection ensured that her Ha was not fully subject to the passage of time. Does this mean that I too shall remain ageless well into my senior years? We shall have to see. Right now I have something more pressing to attend to. Da Vinci's Madonna of the Yarn Winder. Leonardo da Vinci, that most gifted of Renaissance polymaths, once conceived of a composition that would come to be known as Madonna dei Fusi, or Madonna of the Yarn Winder. In it, Mary cradles the infant Christ in her arms, while he stares, rapt, at a spindle, onto which thread is wound, a spindle shaped like a cross. His mother seems more than a little perturbed. Did she perhaps have a premonition that her son would be sacrificed to the salvation of mankind? Me? I like to think of it as the spindle with which the Grecian fates determined the destiny of man. In the ancient tales, the length of the thread dictated the lifespan of the individual in question. Of the three sisters, it was Clotho who unwound the thread, Lachesis who measured the length, and Atropos who, at the appointed hour, made the final cut. If Mary did know the fate that was to befall Christ, might she have intervened, cutting the string at a different point and liberating him of his burden? I cannot help but wonder. As an aside, while I generally prefer the Greek nomenclature, I do have a strange fondness for Lachesis' Roman moniker, Decima. Egyptian mummies, pyramids, etc. At what point can it be said that man truly understands what it means to die? It would seem reasonable to suggest that it was when he began to bury his dead, a practice which originated with the Neanderthals. In a way, one might say that our growing understanding of death drove our development as a species, our fear of it, our attempt to conquer it. Why, it could be argued our entire history revolves around these obsessions. Take the great pyramids of Egypt, or the tombs of the ancient emperors of China. The more powerful the person, the bigger and grander their final resting place. Or, to post a more radical theory, could the very concepts of power and society themselves have emerged solely to facilitate the creation of such monuments, such challenges to the finality of death. Either way, in leaving behind something they hoped they might endure throughout the ages, the builders of these edifices believed that they too might live on forever. The mummies of the Egyptians are another means by which man sought to fulfill his desire to escape the finality of death. They were created that the spiritual self, the Ka, would have a physical vessel, or Ha, to which it could return. The Soku Shinbutsu, or mummified monks of Buddhism, are similar in this respect. However, the monks in question aim to transition straight from life to Buddhahood, in other words, to forego death altogether. But now that the beach has brought us into direct contact with the world beyond, our relationship with death must further evolve. The next stage in our understanding is upon us. The Egyptian view of the brain. It is common nowadays to think of the personality, the mind, of consciousness as a whole, as a phenomena born exclusively of the brain. However, to the ancient Egyptians, things were different. They believed that a person's soul, their spiritual essence, resided in the heart. As a result, the mummification process involved the removal of all internal organs, save this one, the brain included. To the Egyptians, a man's Ka was represented by and contained within the heart, whereas the Ha was made up of the other organs and the remainder of the flesh. Hardly a picture compatible with modern medical science. But consider for a moment the BBs which porters utilize in the field, and the brain-dead still mothers to which they are bound. Could it not be said that in turning our attention away from the brain and towards the heart, the womb, the umbilicus, in our quest to grow closer to the world of the dead, that we are perhaps returning to the old ways? The corals of the seam. Life began in the oceans, and as it evolved, it graduated to the land. At least this is what was believed until recently. To creatures of the sea, the land is a harsh and unforgiving place. Given this, what could have possibly have compelled these organisms to make such a drastic transition? Consider that fossils of the first fish to adapt themselves to land have been found in regions with unusually large tidal range. Could it be that these creatures developed legs in order to more swiftly return to the safety of the sea when stranded? Could their evolutionary leap have been triggered by this traumatic experience? If so, could similar circumstances have shaped the evolution of the coral-like organisms that inhabit the seam, and driven them to develop an ability to live between life and death, between time and timelessness? Coral is, after all, older than any organism of the land, and hardy enough to have weathered the mass extinction of 540 million years ago. And it is a life form upon which many other organisms rely for survival. Bearing all this in mind, one could argue that the ability to survive in the seam is indicative of a profound evolutionary leap. Repatriates and void-outs. I have come across a number of old reports which make mention of humans who have certain powers which have led to them becoming known as repatriates. As we know, when a human and a BT come into contact, a void-out results, which is analogous to what physicists would term an annihilation event. These events occur when matter meets antimatter, and mass is converted violently and abruptly into energy. The process is highly efficient, though some energy is lost to the production of neutrinos. Similarly, in a void-out, vast amounts of energy are released, resulting in destruction on a devastating scale, which leaves behind a large crater. Void-outs triggered by contact with repatriates, however, consistently result in smaller craters. It is suspected that this is because energy is lost to the beach in the same manner that it is lost to neutrino production in a conventional annihilation event, and that in the case of repatriates, the amount of energy lost is particularly high. That said, how the repatriate's body survives is a far bigger mystery, and one which I will refrain from commenting on until I have had the chance to examine one in the flesh. One notable repatriate is Sam Strand, a former member of Bridges who left some years ago and has been making his way in the world as a porter ever since. I do hope I get to meet him someday, considering how invaluable he could be in advancing our understanding of the true nature of beaches and the Death Stranding. ETs are reaching out to us. 2.4 million years ago, Homo habilis started to craft stone tools. Hands are so very important, don't you think? Our other sensory organs passively interpret data. Our eyes, light, our ears, sound, our noses, smell, our mouths, taste. But hands are different. To touch requires conscious action. To grasp, more so. To connect that which is in our left hand with that which is in our right, still more. And the handprints we see when BTs seek out humans? Why, I'd say that's just evidence of our otherworldly friends yearning to forge a connection. They're reaching out to us, attempting to bridge the gap between the realm of the dead and that of the living. King Midas and the chiral crystals. Rumors have been circulating regarding a man who calls himself King Midas. Unlike his namesake from Greek mythology, however, this gentleman does not turn all that he touches to gold. Instead, he claims to wield the power to create chiral crystals at will. The stories suggest that he gained this power as a result of experiments involving organisms which possessed a similar ability. I am of course aware of the existence of microbes that could melt and condense gold, in effect extracting it from ore deposits. But this is the first time I have heard of any organisms that can do something similar with chiralium. These organisms are apparently akin to cryptobiotes, as well as the coral that is found in the seam, in that they exist outside of time. If this man has truly managed to harvest such organisms, then it is an extraordinary achievement, which could lead to untold possibilities. Veritable bioalchemy, even. Much like his mythical counterpart, however, King Midas is said to have paid a heavy price for the power. Indeed, his body is turned into a mass of particles, a side effect of crystallizing all the chiralium with which he came into contact. It is said that the only evidence of his existence are 2 golden handprints he left behind. Now, I must temper this rather dramatic story by stressing that no microbes capable of the previously described ability have been detected. As such, I suspect the king is nothing more than an urban legend, the kind of story spun by dreamers in a world where chiral crystals are rare and precious, and can only be collected from perilous timefall-soaked places. Perhaps you could even consider it a morality tale, the moral being, of course, that greed is never good, whether one lusts for gold or for chiral crystals. It is, however, a remarkable coincidence that not long after I first heard talk of this modern-day King Midas, I also started to hear rumors concerning a man wearing a golden death mask. Might the two be related? Who knows? Evolution, Death Stranding, and the fear of dying. Death has been Homo sapiens' constant companion for every step of our evolutionary journey. Our cultures and civilizations have been built with an awareness of our relationship with death, the extent to which we can accept and live with it. Out of fear of the inevitable decomposition and destruction of the flesh, our ancestors developed elaborate embalming techniques, death masks and the like. Indeed, the mask has ever been a symbol of the soul that transcends this world to exist for eternity in the next. The mummies and sarcophagi of ancient Egypt are but one instance of this. Honored individuals were given masks and placed inside sarcophagi in order to be preserved for eternity, thereby transcending death and attaining immortality. Paintings and photographs are no different, really. They are simply more modern variants of the Egyptians' masks and sarcophagi. Indeed, all of humanity's crowning achievements, art, language, writing, are arguably a reaction to death and an expression of our desire to overcome it. They are great feats born from fear, and one might even go as far to say that it was the primal fear of death that drove the evolution of our ancestors into Homo sapiens in the first place. In fact, I would go further still. I would posit that it was this fear that brought about the Death Stranding itself. It has certainly seemed more and more plausible of late. Bridges needs Homo ludens. I have already spoken at length about the new varieties of man that have emerged in the wake of chiral pollution and from the resulting phobias. Homo demens, Homo gestalt, not to mention those touched by dooms. This much is common knowledge. I, however, would posit that we could further categorize the humans of this day and age. Take our comrades Mama and Lockney, for example. They are creators, are they not? People who use tools to make things. Craftspeople. Homo faber. Consider Deadman. One who looks the dead in their eyes every day. One who takes their organs as his own. His relationship with death is transcendental, sublime. It is, in essence, his faith, and he a homo religiosus. As for myself, homo loquens, a linguist. One who seeks to understand the world through the language of science and logic. There is, however, another very special type of human, a breed that would serve bridges rather well. Homo ludens, they who play. Be it deliberate or unintentional, Homo ludens unites people, creating culture, shaping the very world around them. Not through violence, nor laws or prescriptions, but rather through metaphorical acts of play. I know of only one person who matches this description, the one they call the Great Deliverer, Sam Porter. Despite Die Hartmann's best efforts, however, his whereabouts are still unknown. End of tape 2. Start of tape 3. The Chiral Network 1. So, the core infrastructure is complete. The basic Cupid ready, Chiral Network setup is good to go. Now all we have to do is connect Central Knot City to Capital and prove that it actually works. Sadly, I won't be here to see it. I've been assigned to the expedition team's second group, so I'll be heading west with the others. But the people in charge here are the best of the best. They'll have that network operational inside of 3 years, just as planned. I'm sure of it. And while they're seeing to that, we'll be visiting towns and whatnot across the country, and putting the facilities in place for when things are finally up and running. Amelie and the others in the lead group will be forging the connections and laying the groundwork to make sure everything goes to plan. Afterwards, we'll just need to link it all up with operational Cupids, and that should be that. It's kind of like the Apollo missions back in the day. They used a 3-stage rocket to get to the moon, right? Well, we're using a 3-stage process to do something almost as revolutionary. The Chiral Network 2. In a way, the Chiral Network makes use of the beach to allow us to travel through time. See, sending large amounts of data takes large amounts of time, as you'd expect. But the thing about beaches is, well, time doesn't pass the same way in them as it does here. Might not even pass at all. Think about how the light from the stars in the sky we see was produced thousands and thousands of years ago. Routing data through the beach is like jumping to a point earlier in that journey, thereby cutting it shorter. Much shorter. Just imagine massive amounts of data transferred almost instantaneously. That's what we're trying to achieve with the Chiral Network, in a nutshell. In theory, the network allows us to reconstruct old data that would otherwise be lost, and to do so with fragmented resources, using what's known as Evo-Devo analysis. We could take the finger bone of a dinosaur, say, and extrapolate from that not only the dinosaur's form, but its composition, internal, external, even its thought processes, to a degree. Anything is possible with chiral computing. In other words, we won't just be able to reunite a nation. We'll be able to reclaim everything we lost in the Death Stranding. More even, theoretically, we could go back as far as the birth of the planet and beyond. And thanks to the beach, we'll be able to compile all that data in one place, and reduce the processing time for even the most complex analysis to nearly zero. Drones and the Singularity. Yep, the bot is good to go. We're putting it through some field tests within the network service area. Should have the results before long. Delivery efficiency within a given region is expected to improve following successful Cupid connection as well. No, that won't be a problem. The bot's just a cargo carrier. Human input is required to accept orders and set coordinates. Drone syndrome shouldn't be a factor. And the singularity? Not a chance. Well, think about it. AI doesn't die. It might get upgraded or replaced, but it's not at all comparable to death. So it has no reason to fear it, you see? The concept is completely foreign, incomprehensible. Death comes to all living things, but only humans have the capacity to understand the implications, to imagine what it means to no longer exist. That's one limitation AI won't ever overcome. That's the reason it won't ever surpass human intelligence. Lochner and Mollingen. You know what we used to dream about? Seeing what's beyond those clouds up there. We spent our whole lives beneath a Corellium sky. It's all we ever known. But we also know that the world used to be so much bigger. Our parents told us. They were researchers who worked for NASA, though these days most people wouldn't know what that was. It went up in smoke around the same time America did. And all our parents' work went with it. But we still have our dreams. The one thing our parents gave us that can never be taken away. Mollingen and I were named after a pair of craters left by meteors, which struck the Earth 450 million years ago. Those craters are proof that this planet is part of something bigger, that we exist within a vast, interconnected universe. Our names serve as a reminder of this fundamental truth, symbols of our parents' hope that our isolation is only temporary. That's why we joined Bridges, too, to bring the people of this country together again, and to one day reunite this planet with the greater universe that surrounds it. What became of Mollingen and Lochner? We'd forgotten all about our dreams of going to space. It was a dream from an earlier, simpler time. From before we realized our baby was a BT, binding us to the other side. And before we had to sever the link between us. After that, Mollingen couldn't even leave the lab, and Lochner swore to live a life of isolation in Mountain Knot City. There was no room in our heart for outer space. But now that we're one, it's all become so clear. In choosing isolation, choosing to forget about the outside world, we were just being human, just doing what everyone else was doing. We turned inwards, venturing deeper and deeper into ourselves, focusing on our inner worlds at the expense of the one we shared. Maybe this is what they mean when they say that the beach is a reflection of the individual's soul. We became trapped in the multiverses contained within. But at last we have a chance to escape, now that America is whole. We can begin to expand our boundaries once more. The bonds we've forged could carry us beyond these clouds. It's past time we saw the stars again. Prepper interview, The Engineer. My horizons ain't exactly broad. That said, I'm not completely cut off from the outside world. I knew what Bridges was, and that they were trying to rebuild America. But when you're living down here, it's hard to see how that's got anything to do with you and yourself. Am I right? My folks holed up in this shelter after the Death Stranding. Had a kid and raised him in their slice of paradise. And together we lived off whatever Fragile Express was kind enough to bring our way. They told me the tales about the good old days, but I've never had much of an imagination. Couldn't see how a country long gone was any concern of me and mine. Far as I figured, if Fragile Express was happy to keep bringing us stuff, we didn't need anybody else. And we certainly didn't need America. Whatever that even was. But then, one day, I was looking at a part for this machine my dad put together. He was an engineer, too. And I noticed something. It said, "Made in the USA." Right there, in tiny print. Got me thinking that America might not exist anymore, but the stuff Americans built is still around, making our lives a little bit easier, even now. You could say the old country lives on in its works. Kind of like how my folks live on in me. They, died a while back. Anyway, if they were American, I guess that makes me American too. Maybe this shelter, a part of it all. Once I realized that, I started pouring my heart into building stuff to help you guys put the country back together. Terrorists posing as Fragile Express couriers. The terrorists have been at it again lately. You heard, right? About how they've been sneaking in and out of cities, disguised as Fragile Express couriers. We'll have another disaster on our hands at this rate. But it's not like we can just cut them out. We need Fragile's people to keep on doing what they're doing. We rely on those guys for a lot. Well, maybe we shouldn't. I hear they're transporting weapons now. Why'd they be so stupid? I can't imagine. Spreading shit around that kills in a world where the dead are taking BT bombs? Sure, terrorists are a threat, and mules a royal pain in the ass. But what genius figured escalation was the way to go, when we all know where it leads? We need weapons, no, tools, that can take down the bad guys without killing them. And we need the hardware in circulation gone yesterday. We can't keep folks from dying in accidents or getting sick. We can't keep them from dying, period. But the deaths we can put off, we ought to. Violence isn't just ugly, it's damn near suicidal in this day and age. Which is why I'm looking to make a bunch of less than lethal gear, in the hopes that it'll prevent a few idiots from getting themselves and others killed. Prepper interview, the Timefall farmers. Me? I used to be an ecologist. Amelie thought highly of me and my wife's research into Timefall's effect on plant life. She was the one who suggested it could be used to boost agricultural production. See, Timefall's radically altered the ecosystem of the entire continent. Obvious, I know, just as it's obvious that we're powerless to stop it. So, we had the idea of trying to use it to our advantage instead. Make the environment better, not worse. Easier said than done, though. Take void-out craters, for example. Local chiral density is generally higher in their vicinity, which correlates with increased timefall. With all that exposure, you'd think they'd turn lush and green again before you know it. Unfortunately, it doesn't quite pan out that way. Nothing grows in any of them. Might be that timefall's done something to the soil, but the truth is, I don't have a clue. Which was one of the reasons why me and the missus were conducting our research. Gotta say, for the record, that it hadn't crossed our minds that timefall could be used to help grow food. That idea was all Amelie, so credit where it's due. Prepper interview, the junk dealer. Incredible, isn't it? This hourglass. See how the sand flows upwards? Got chiral particles in it. That's why it moves like that. And look at the shape of the glass. So elegant. So delicate. Just like the girl who made it. Hard to believe it's even off this world. But it was made by human hands, all right. Crazy, isn't it? No wonder everyone in South Knot City knows her work. You can imagine how I felt when she gave it to me. I guess you could say it was a thank you present. She asked me to fix something for her, and this is what I got in return. You know, I've done jobs for all kinds over the years, but none of my other customers ever did anything like this for me. Most will just toss you a couple of likes, and that's the end of it. Don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with a like or two. It's just, this was different. The moment she gave me this hourglass, I knew. I wanted to be with her. Never happened, though. Ain't cut out for love and relationships. I don't have what it takes. Other people kind of scare me, to be honest. Still, even if we can't be together, at least I'll have this hourglass. Prepper interview, the photographer. It wasn't that long ago that we moved to this shelter, the three of us. Before that, we used to live in the city, until my husband up and said we had to leave. He was so insistent, and I didn't have any choice but to go along with it. I couldn't take care of my daughter by myself. He said he was sick of city life. And I can't say I don't understand at all. I mean, timefall may not have been an issue, or BTs, but I can see how a safe and comfortable life might become suffocating. Our daughter might be happy and healthy, but we're the exception. Hardly anyone's even having children these days. You don't need a crystal ball to see where the world's headed. My husband says we're bound for extinction. Says nobody's doing anything about it. People would rather stick their heads in the sand and try to wait out the storm. If we don't figure out the Death Stranding and fix this world of ours, that's all she wrote. My husband says that a lot. That maybe he's just a guy with a camera, but at least he's doing something, and so on. He's out again somewhere, investigating something. Recently he started taking our daughter with him, teaching her to take photos of rocks and murals and the like. I'm glad they're spending time together, and I know it's good for her education, but I still hate it when they go out and leave me here to wait and pray that they come home safe and sound. Prepper interview, The Mountaineer. People aren't meant to stay cooped up inside or live in one place forever. It's not natural. Exploration is in our DNA. The great outdoors is where we're supposed to be. You know our ancestors started out in Africa, right? Well, they didn't just stay there, did they? They wanted to try and find a better life, a better home. That's why humanity spread all across the planet. As we've traveled, we've evolved. Little by little, we've grown tougher and smarter. Even our immune systems have become stronger. But if we stop moving, stop exploring, that all stops too. We stagnate as a species, maybe even regress. That's why we can't hole up in the cities. There's a whole universe beyond those chiral clouds that I'd love to explore someday. But if that's not possible, then I want to at least get as close as I can. Climb the biggest mountains, go as high as I can go, and try to see what lies beyond. And I want to do it with the love of my life. The world-class mountaineer who showed me the beauty of this place. My guiding star. Together, there's no peak we can't summit. Prepper interview, The Spiritualist. No one's been able to explain the Death Stranding, and I doubt that anyone ever will. Certainly not with science. Science is only suitable for observation, measurement, objectivity. You can observe and measure as much as you like, but it will bring you no closer to an understanding. Sometimes you need to expand your mind and open your heart. Seek the souls of the dead. Listen for the waves on the beach. In antiquity, there were no barriers between the realms. People moved freely between the earth, outer space, and the world of the dead. What are myths and legends if not records of these journeys? My research has only confirmed this. The pyramids of Egypt and Mesoamerica, the Nazcan lines, Stonehenge, all gateways, built by humans in order to access the beach. Surely you can see that the wisdom of the ancients has never been more relevant. The America of the past. Oh boy, you want to hear about America? Well, you asked for it. But if you're looking for some rose-tinted bullshit, you've come to the wrong place. I'm an immigrant, you see. Nothing special about that. Whole country was built by immigrants. Right off the bat, I could see it wasn't quite the land of the free I'd been led to believe. But for a while there, it wasn't so bad. Even bought into the American dream for a minute. I mean, hell, they let a black guy and a woman take a shot at the presidency, you know? Didn't last, though. Somewhere along the line, people became so damned intolerant. All of a sudden, there wasn't any room for other opinions, or other people for that matter. We even elected a guy right before the Death Stranding that wanted to build a wall along the whole border, stop anyone like me from coming in. Once that talk started, I reckoned that was that. How could I expect a goddamn thing from a country that didn't want me? How could I hope to get by in a land where the weak and needy got fucked over for profit and peace of mind? So yeah, I figured holding up in a shelter was the way to go. Didn't know how bad it would get. No one did. But I tell you, if it hadn't been for that single decision, I wouldn't be here talking to you right now. Just goes to show that the only person anyone can rely on is his own damn self. UCA, give me a break. You're just pushing the same old bullshit. repackaged for a brave new world. Prepper shelters. Back before the stranding, there was all kinds of companies selling all kinds of shelters. Hurricane-proof, earthquake-proof, disease-proof, war-proof, terror-proof. Probably had a recession-proof model for all I know. Any way you could picture it all going to hell, they had a shelter for it. And the guys building them? Military types, astronautical engineers, amateur enthusiasts. Everybody and his uncle was out to make a buck. But if you wanted something that'll actually last, you had yourself 3 solid choices. First, there's your American Survival Shelters units. They were a global military hardware supplier. Used to build big government bunkers, nuclear shelters, all that. They started selling to the general consumer right before the stranding. Good timing, huh? Anyway, those babies were the creme de la creme. Next up, you had your Millennium Preppers. They made it big right after a string of terror attacks. Started selling out bank vaults and reinforced containers and the like. Wasn't enough of them to break into the shelter game, and they knew how to build them tough. Then there's your domestic guys. World Safety Housing. All about affordability they were. Cheap and cheerful. Well, as cheerful as anyone could be after the stranding. Still, they did a lot of good for a lot of folks after things went to shit. Prepper interview. The doctor. I know what you're thinking. Why is this prepper claiming to be a doctor? Don't worry, you're not the first. Rest assured that I really am a doctor. I even have a medical license, though the governing body that issued it to me is long gone. So I won't be offended if that counts for little. But, license or no, people still need doctors. Preppers get sick too, you know. That's not so hard for you to get your head around, is it? Most folks haul themselves to a city hospital when there's something wrong. But out in the boonies, that's not really an option. But we can't just leave those people to die. You know full well what will follow. And so I do what I can to help. Around here, I'm the only one people can rely on to keep them alive. Whenever I'm needed, I try to find someone to transport me to a patient's residence. But that's hardly the most efficient approach. And it doesn't endear me to the porters either. I've heard that Bridges is trying to bring everyone into their chiral network. If it's as good as I've heard, it will be a real game changer. I could perform all sorts of diagnoses and even some treatments without having to leave my shelter. I hope you manage to extend it here soon. There's a lot of people out here counting on us both. Higgs Journal. Number 1. Today I made a delivery to a shelter near Middle Knot City. It was my longest trip to date. A new personal best. Back when I was starting out, people tried to warn me off the life, saying it was dangerous for a prepper youngins to make runs, and that no one would ever really trust me. But what was I supposed to do? Kids without parents need to eat too, and it's not like I had any skills. 2 arms, 2 legs, whole lot of grit. That's all I had to offer. Worked out okay so far. I bring people what they need, and in return they do right by me. The more deliveries I make, the more orders I get. Never a porter around when you need one. So as long as I don't fuck up too badly, someone ought to throw you a bone. Helps that I've got a 6th sense for PTs too. Pretty rare, that. It's probably one of the reasons why I get so much work. Sometimes people praise me. Sometimes people praise me. Tell me I'm doing society a service by helping my fellow man. Can't say that factors into it. I'd sooner keep to myself if I could. But I've got to survive somehow. And I sure as hell ain't gonna manage by myself. Journal 2. Another prepper's kicked the bucket. I went to deliver his medicine as usual this morning, but I guess it was pretty damn late. Poor guy wasn't just dead, but on the verge of going necro. Wasn't no time to take him to an incinerator, so I had to dump him in nearby BT territory. Better than leaving him to pop, especially since my own shelter is close by. Gotta look out for number 1. When I dumped him, though, just before he popped. It was like I could feel the BTs reacting to the corpse. Saw the beach, too. Strangest thing. But I felt it before. When I first disposed of someone, the sensation was stronger. This time, though, no doubt about it. I don't know if this means I've got dooms, but I'm starting to think there's something special about me. Journal 3. A delivery outfit out west heard tell of my BT sensing abilities and has expressed an interest in bringing me on board. Seems they operate outside Bridges' sphere of influence. They want to leverage my experience and know-how to expand their operation. Could be interesting. It's funny. I started making runs out of necessity to stay alive. But that's all changed. I'm an altruist now. I live to help other people. Preppers around these parts rely on me. Hell, they wouldn't last 5 minutes without me. What would my daddy say if he could see me now, He taught me a man's his own keeper. But here I am, part of a community, working with other people, bringing the world together. Daddy always told me that the wide, wide world was dangerous, that we had to stay in our shelter, spend our whole life there, die there. Well, fuck that. Community is what it's all about. Journal 4. Buddy of mine died today. He was out in the mountains on a delivery, and it was so goddamn foggy. I guess he lost sight of the trail. He called me, asking for help, but the line went dead. I saw the Voidot from here, nearly blinded me. Guess he wandered into BT territory. There's not many of us porters left these days. Not many you could trust to get the job done, anyway. Folks quitting or dying, going mule. Attrition's a bitch. If we're to keep on, we're gonna need better equipment. And someone else who can track BTs. I can still manage sometimes, but my power's getting weaker. I can feel it. Just wish I knew what to do. 'Cause at this rate, I'm fucked. We all are. Journal 5. Ha and Ka. Body and soul. The two become separated. You die. In this world, at least. The death ain't the end, though. So long as your soul's got a body to come back to, you can be reborn. Resuscitated, anyway. That's why people built coffins and sarcophagi. To preserve the body, so the soul had a home it could return to. I learned all this and more from an old book I found. The Wisdom of the Egyptians. Chock full of interesting tidbits about death and how to overcome it. Like the golden death masks of the pharaohs, the ones decorated using magical adornments as an indication of the wearer's prestige and power. I'll tell you what, if we learned anything from the beach, it's that the Egyptians had it all figured out. That's why I've decided to give myself a mask. Not a death mask, though, but one for living, for ruling. Today is the last day anyone sees my face. I don't need it anymore. Journal 6. A Bridges way station out west was just taken up by terrorists. Used a Voidot to do it. They dumped a corpse nearby and let it go necro, dropping BTs right into people's laps. Word is, demons heard that Bridges was sending an expeditionary force out west to facilitate the reconstruction of America, or some such. Guess they didn't take kindly to that. Terrorists, separatists, isolationists, all these folks claim America is coming for their freedom. That the old guard wants to put them in chains, make the individual subservient to the collective. They ask, what's it all for in a post-stranding world, when today's triumph is tomorrow's crater? Daddy used to spout the same tired lines, said America never did nothing for nobody. That's why we took to living in a shelter. Better down in the hole than out there under their thumb. Yeah, he was a real saint, my daddy. I tried to run a few times, but he just dragged me back inside, kicking and screaming, where he'd put those heavy hands of his to work and remind me what had happened if I disrespected his authority. But that's love, isn't it? His way of looking after an orphan child he raised as his own. He was only trying to protect me from the evils of the outside world. I owe him my life, and my powers too. First time I ever sensed that BT was when I held him, moments before he went necro. Just like when I dumped that prepper's body. My daddy showed me that corpses are precious, powerful things. They're so much more than bombs. Terrorists ought to treat them with proper respect. Journal 7. I've had us team up with a bunch of porters who service the central part of the country. Had to be done. The writing was on the wall for my crew otherwise. And guess what? Their leaders got dooms. I've got a feeling we're gonna be good friends. Demons and terrorists have been getting more aggressive ever since the Bridges expedition team set out. As if BTs and mules weren't enough. Now we gotta keep our eyes peeled for those assholes when we're making runs. All the more reason we gotta come together, get organized. Me and my new partner, we've been talking about consolidating our operations so we can cover the whole continent. If we do, I suppose that'll make us like the UCA in some respects. Different structure and methods, but similar ideology. A deep and abiding belief in the importance of community. But the devil's in the details, isn't it? Rules, structures. Can't just let people make decisions for themselves. And therein lies the risk. Can't have us repeating the sins of the past with another USA. And demons, well, they ain't about to think for themselves. At the end of the day, a community needs a strong leader. And the God's honest truth is that I'm the only one cut out for it. Journal 8. The rumors I'd heard about my new partner's power don't do her justice. I knew she had dooms, but she's on a whole other level, I tell you. I've never seen anything like it. Not only can she perceive BTs, but she can actually use the beach. Compared to hers, my powers are nothing. Parlor tricks courtesy of a few corpses. But it doesn't matter, not as long as I've got her. Before we met, I was bound by the limitations of my abilities. I was a blind man groping for shadows of a secret realm. But now, because of her, I can actually go to the beach. The beach. With her by my side, I could reshape this world. Not into what it was, with the old USA. Not like what Bridges wants. Something new, something everlasting, right here and now. A world where we're free to do whatever we goddamn please. Journal 9. My partner's powers are extraordinary, sure. But deep down I know that two of us alone don't have what it takes to bring true, lasting freedom to the people. Everything we've done, that we continue to do, no matter how much it may seem to bring people together, it's still a far cry from what it should be. Timefall, BTs, chiral clouds, all this and more, serves to cut us from the rest of creation, and I have to say I don't think that's ever going to change. Even people like me and my partner, we have our limits. But now I've met someone who has none. Someone who could save the world from this madness. Make it whole again. Put our shattered pieces back together. Journal 10. Samantha America Strand. Amelie. The moment I met her, I knew she was destined to make us whole again. She told me we'd do it together, and even gave me a gift. A bridge baby. It's a BT sensor of sorts, although it looks like a newborn. But it's not. Amelie says it was born on the beach, that it serves as a link between our world and the other side. Between me and her, too, if I keep it with me at all times. She called it a new child for a new era. I'm not just a delivery guy anymore. I'm a herald for her and her new world. She's given me everything I ever wanted, ever needed, and now I'm free to cut Fragile loose. Journal 11. BB reminds me of a baby doll, but it's no toy, that's for sure. Neither dead nor alive, half human, half something else. An inhabitant of the in-between, like a mummy. A lump of flesh wrapped around a shriveled yet still beating heart. So many symbols to choose from, all signifying that humanity's reached the end of the road. The stranding was big number 6. I see that now, and so much more. The void outs, the bodies birthing BTs, all aspects of a single phenomenon that exists solely to wipe us off the face of the earth. We can't stop what's coming. It's inevitable. Putting Humpty Dumpty back together won't change a goddamn thing. And risking life and limb to try a fool's errand? Why sacrifice what little you've gotten here and now for a future that'll never come? It's wasteful and meaningless. Amelie'd agree for sure. Journal 12. I met Amelie on the beach again and pressed her for more answers about the stranding. But she wouldn't give me anything. Maybe she's got nothing left to give. Maybe she's waiting till the time's right. I don't know, I don't care. We all know there's no escaping extinction. I'm struggling to see her angle. Why even pretend to rebuild? Why rail against the inevitable? If there's another layer to this, I can work it out. And I'm getting sick and tired of trying. If she's not gonna let me in on her plans, I'm gonna have to assume the worst and take matters into my own hands. Give humanity the coup de grace myself. I just need the power to do it. Journal 13. Dear Diary, today I nuked Middle Knot City, wiped it clean off the map. Didn't carry the bomb myself, of course. Fragile did the honors. Delivered my mercy to the people like a good little porter. I'm sure she's surprised, but she shouldn't be. Death and destruction are part and parcel of the human condition. And bringing people together only exacerbates that. Be careful what you wish for, eh? It's like when our ancestors came from the old world to the new and brought their old world diseases with them. Natives had no immunity, and over half died in the blink of an eye. Bam. And we've only come up with better, more effective ways of killing ever since. The network's just another means of hastening the end. This was always the logical conclusion of our efforts, mine and Fragile's. Maybe that's why I partnered up with her, because in my heart of hearts, I knew it was building to this. Journal 14. Sam Porter. Where to begin? Dooms, Repatriate, Lone Wolf, Amelie's adopted brother, motherfucker. Impression I get is that he's a loner who found meaning in being a good Samaritan. Yeah, I tried that mask on for size once upon a time. Sweet little Amelie, though. She buys into his act. Thinks he's got what it takes to help her make America whole again. I tell you what, the more I look into it, the more it seems like he actually might be a true believer. Fucking hell. Anyways, he's a dead man walking. Even with Amelie's help, he'll be in Central before long. And the second he shows up, I'm bringing a shit ton of BTs down on his head and turning that place into a crater. And it's bye-bye Sammy Porter, bye-bye Bridges HQ, bye-bye Expedition Team. Journal 15. Sam's still alive. Not even a void out's enough to keep a repatriate down. Sticks in my craw. Second expedition got wiped out, obviously. But Sam seems happy to head west all by himself. Stupid fuck's crazier than me. Maybe just desperate. Still can't figure out why rebuilding the nation's so important to him. Well, whatever. He wants to keep at it, he can be my guest. Even if he still had the others backing him up, it wouldn't make a difference. Ending's already been written. I've worked it out. Worked out exactly how it's gonna go down. But dooms alone isn't enough. I need a greater power to finish the job. To rain down fire and brimstone on these modern-day Sodoms and Gomorrahs. Journal 16. I've discovered the truth about the Death Stranding. Amelie's powers have nothing to do with dooms. She's destruction incarnate. The angel of the Death Stranding. The extinction entity. I understand now what my true role is. The bridge that will deliver her judgment to this world. The executor of the end. No one knows, not even Sam. But they will. Journal 17. Sam's arrived in Port Knot City, and with Fragile to boot. Think I'll meet them there, and bring a BT or two along for the ride. It's past time I showed Bridges how powerful I've become. Come one, come all. We'll have ourselves an annihilation party, and when it's over, there'll be no one left to come between me and Amelie and the end of the world. Journal 18. God damn is Sammy Boy stubborn. Just ain't the quitting type. Seems he's rubbing off on Amelie too. Girl's trying to fight her true nature. Flip the script. For all the good it'll do her. What difference does it make if it ends tomorrow or 1,000,000 years from now? This planet's 4.6 billion years old. And the universe? God only knows. Humanity's entire history is a blip on that timescale. What's the fucking point of fighting for a fraction longer? Anyways, Sam and Fragile made it to Lake Knot City, which is just as well. I reckon my old partner's due for a stroll down memory lane. A saunter through the crater she carved out with that nuke of mine. Come to think of it, maybe Sam ought to walk it with her. Yeah, I think I'll have him make a special delivery for me. Journal 19. Well, shit. Sam and Fragile managed to dispose of my nuke before it went off. They weren't smart enough to see through my disguise, but something must have tipped them off. Probably what I wrote on the tag. I know I should have resisted the temptation, but come on. Who the hell reads that shit these days? And now he's halfway to the coast. But he's in my neck of the woods now, and my boys ain't about to let up. We're gonna make him regret ever fucking with me and mine. Journal 20. The fuck was that storm that sucked up Sam? A supercell or whatever? I hooked up my BB just before I arrived. And it started shaking and blinking and... it's all gone sideways. And there's something else out there. Something all kinds of fucked up. Don't need a BB to tell me that. Journal 21. I've got Amelie. Fucking finally. She's trapped in Edge Knot City. A horde of BTs all around. She's not going anywhere now. No, I'm gonna take good care of my sweet little angel of death. My extinction entity. We got plans, me and her. As for you, Sammy boy, you're gonna learn what it means to really suffer. Journal 22. Welcome to the Edge, Sam. You're a real asshole. But I've got to admit, you've got grit. You remind me of me in that regard. And because we share a connection to Amelie. She gave you your dream catcher, me, my Kipu. But you've never seen her face, have you? Never looked her in the eye and seen her for what she truly is. Time to wake up and smell the ashes, Sammy boy. Time for me to tell you, to tell everyone, the truth that hides at the heart of the stranding. You're gonna love it. I'd go grab some shut-eye at the distro center or whatever if I were you. We've got a showdown coming, and you're gonna want to be fighting fit. Just don't keep me waiting too long, you hear? Journal 23. You're all alone now. You've lost everything. Your mask, her Kipu, the BB doll, gone. You thought you had the power, and you were the one fated to lead them unto extinction. Yet here you are alone. You thought you were in control. But this was your role, your dream. The verge of victory, of oblivion for one and all. Herald, executioner, pawn, God particle. A stupid name for a stupid goddamn fool. This was your life, Higgs. Your tale, told by an idiot, full of sound and righteous fury, signifying nothing. Journal 24. My first memory is of looking up at the ceiling of our shelter, as a baby bawling my eyes out. All of a sudden, the hand of God comes into view, blotting out the steel sky. Daddy lifts me up, not gentle, but not hard, shouts some stuff, but it's all gibberish I can't make heads or tails of. He ain't my real daddy, though. That one died before I was born, and Mama soon after. Of disease or something, I don't know. My brother took me in, whisked me away from that shelter reeking of piss and death, and brought me here. Daddy number 2. He never really took to it. He was an ugly, violent man, full of anger with nowhere to go. Tried to love me in his own way, but I don't know if he ever had it in him. Daddy told me our shelter was our world, and I believed him. I grew up thinking no one but us two existed. Then, when I got a little older, I started asking questions. Simple questions about where the food came from. That kind of thing. Got smacked upside the head for my troubles. But try as he might, he couldn't beat the curiosity out of me. One day I peeked at his monitor. It was the first glimpse I ever caught of the outside world. I pestered Daddy about it. And you bet I caught holy hell for it. But I wore him down, and eventually he came clean, and admitted there was a whole world out there, soaked to the bone by timefall, and overrun by demons that would eat me up. It occurred to me later that his fear-mongering probably got Mama killed, failing her head with his hysterics about the dead walking the earth, and the only safe haven being 6 feet under. Journal 25. My Mama entrusted me to her brother, so he had no choice but to raise me best he could. Say what you will about the man, but he had himself a sense of obligation. He might even have harbored a measure of affection for me, but whatever was in his heart, he expressed with his hands, his fists. Any hopes and dreams he might have had for me, for us, fell by the wayside pretty quick. We slipped into a daily routine of warnings to stay the fuck inside, bookended by beatings to drive the point home. I think sometimes he sincerely believed that was the only way to protect me. But I wasn't about to go on living like that. Can't cage a young boy's spirit. If I'd stayed, I'd have died, body and soul. I had to get out. Started hoarding supplies in secret. But he caught on. That was the beginning of the worst beating yet. He was grabbing anything and everything within reach that could be used as a weapon. Tearing our shelter apart, smashing furniture, all the while waiting like a wounded animal, tears streaming down his face. He pinned me down, tears and spit flying in my face as he blubbered about me not understanding his pain. His fucking pain. His hands around my neck, darkness creeping in from the corners. His fucking pain. His fucking pain. The kitchen knife in my hands. In his neck. His hands, his fucking hands, they grow weak and he just deflates like a balloon all over me. I roll him off and I look into his glassy eyes, filled with his fucking pain and our steel sky. Journal 26. I didn't know how to feel after. I spent the night next to him, my mind a blank canvas. In the back of it, a nagging voice saying I had to dispose of it. Daddy hadn't told me much, but he had told me about how bodies go necro, pop BTs and all that. Made for a good bedtime story. So I knew what would happen if I let him lie. Death would come into our home and turn it into a crater. His stink was starting to fill up the room. I had to deal with him, had to get him out. Get him as far away as possible. So I got my arms under his and dragged him out into a new world with a new sky. Bigger, emptier, bare rock, dotted with bushes all around. Mountains, fucking mountains, off in the distance. Chiral clouds hugging their peaks. My knees started getting wobbly, and the world began to spin. But I knew the clock was ticking. Eyes down. Gotta deal with Daddy. I'd been moving at a steady clip when I saw it. Chiralium coming off Daddy. Little motes of shimmering light. I was out of time. I laid him down in the dirt, but before I let go I had a vision. My hands, still resting on his body, disappeared, vaporized into a fine mist. Poof. And then I felt another presence. A BT, coming slow, but sure. Like I'd been walking since the beginning of time. Daddy's keeper. That was the first one I sensed, but it wasn't the last. For a long while after, I remained awakened to their presence. A sixth sense. Daddy's parting gift to me. Over time, it would fade, but I knew how I got it, and I knew how to get it back. All I needed was another body, and I got real good at making them. Death for life, theirs for mine. A fair exchange. Higgs Journal, Coffin 1. The head of the outfit who recognized my talents and sought me out was a woman who called herself Coffin. The things she told me, oh boy. I'd heard that Bridges wanted to rebuild America, which is all well and good, but made no difference to me. I was content to stick with my smaller circle of associates. Mind my own business, stay alive. But Coffin, she spun me a different yarn. Said that Bridges was out to fuck the world up, and then some. That their plan for rebuilding America involved honest-to-God human sacrifice, of unborn children at that. These so-called BBs were being carted to some factory by the boatload to be slaughtered. She and her friends even done some of the carting themselves, unwittingly. The guilt was eating her alive. So Bridges are using children for their own ends. Them and Daddy'd get along swell. Not Coffin, though. Seems she and her crew are behind the spat of recent terrorism. Not that she considers it to be terrorism, of course. Me neither. If Bridges is doing what she claims, then someone's gonna make them pay, am I right? Ain't no value in a false connection, especially if it comes at a steep cost like that. Some things a man can't abide. So I'll stand with Coffin and follow her lead, even if it's gotta be in secret. Coffin 2. Coffin gave me a mission. We said our goodbyes and went our separate ways. She took a team and raided the BB factory. Their strategy was solid, and it should have gone like clockwork. Save the kids, shut down the operation. Everyone goes home feeling good. And then Bridges went and blew the whole damn facility to kingdom come. Wiped out everything and everyone in an instant. Of course, that wasn't the story they fed to the public. Instead, they announced that, despite terrible destruction and loss of life, they'd finally managed to eliminate the terrorist threat, or some such bullshit. Little do they know that Coffin survived. Guess whatever tunnels they built underground held up better than anticipated. No idea who else is down there or how they're holding up. Haven't heard from her in a while. Best to keep my distance and let Bridges think she's dead. I've got my own mission after all. Gotta head west, play the good porter a little while longer. Only way to save the BBs and put a stop to Bridges. And do right by Coffin. And her daughter, should we ever cross paths. Wonder if we'll ever meet again. In a dream, maybe. End of tape 3. Start of tape 4. Lucy. Satellite town of UCA 01032 has been wiped off the map by a void-out, leaving nothing but an enormous crater. Terrorism was suspected at first, but the investigation spearheaded by Bridges quickly ruled out the possibility, and eventually concluded that the cause was the corpse of a civilian, which had been left to necrotize, unnoticed, in an urban residential area. The deceased was Lucy Strand. Tragically, she was also 7 months pregnant. The child had already been named Lou. Cause of death was ruled a drug overdose, possibly intentional, though that remains unconfirmed at this time. Surveillance data was sent to Bridges HQ for analysis, but the results were inconclusive. Lucy's husband, Sam Strand, had been away for some time, and became concerned when he was unable to contact his wife. Though he attempted to return home, the void-out was triggered immediately after his arrival. Being a repatriate, Sam was the sole survivor of the blast. as the deceased was the wife of a prominent member of Bridges, who himself is the son of President Strand. Public support for the organization suffered. Many criticized the crisis management team's handling of the situation, as well as the priorities of the organization and President Strand herself. Some believe that Sam Strand was involved with his wife's death, and that he should be held to account. While both the administration and Bridges adamantly defended him for a time, public pressure continued to mount. In a gesture his co-workers suspect was his way of taking responsibility, Sam Strand resigned from Bridges. His current whereabouts are unknown. Lucy's report, number 1. I've just concluded my first therapy with Sam Strand. It was not held at the patient's request. Sam's adoptive mother, President Strand, approached me in the hope I might help her son overcome his aphantasmophobia. Sam is an intriguing case. His reluctance notwithstanding, he recognizes that his condition has and will continue to cause him much distress. I suspect it is rooted in a childhood trauma, but unfortunately, we've only just scratched the surface. I cannot even begin to speculate what it might be. Like many of the Bridges core team members, Sam is a dooms sufferer. Unlike them, however, he is also a repatriate. Whether or not this is related to his aphantasmophobia, I cannot say at this time. But he would hardly be the first to manifest phobias as a result of his abilities. As an infant, Sam lost both parents and was adopted by President Strand. Owing to her stress and time-consuming responsibilities, I can only presume that she was unable to afford him sufficient attention, which is to say that a distant relationship with his adoptive mother may be a contributing factor. As previously mentioned, though, Sam is very reluctant to talk about himself. He is an intensely private individual, and it will take time to build trust and convince him to open himself up to me. Report number 2. Progress has been slow, but Sam has finally started to open up to me. However, his recollection of early childhood is confused and contradictory. He has a difficulty distinguishing between genuine memories and reoccurring dreams. Sam even claims to have met his stepsister Amelie on the beach several times while quite young. An impossible claim, to say the least. I'm only a little older than Sam, but I was born before the Death Stranding. A fact that tends to affect the way we think about the beach. In my professional opinion, the beach is a figment of our collective imagination, a shared delusion. But people born later are more likely to take its existence as a given. I wonder if they find comfort in the belief, because it helps to explain phenomena like BTs and repatriates like Sam. Similarly, my theory is that Sam's manufactured childhood memories of the beach are his way of coping with the fact that neither Amelie nor Bridget spent much time with him. I believe this is also the reason he still clings to the dream catcher Amelie gave him even now, as an adult. You could call it his security blanket. It may also be the key to overcoming his aphantasmophobia. If Sam were to emotionally distance himself from Amelie, it might reduce his resistance to physical intimacy. I will propose this approach to him in our next session. Report number 3. It came as no surprise, but Sam was unreceptive to my suggestion and rejected my assessment of his relationship with Amelie. He asserted that he is not dependent on her or Bridget, and even went so far as to question my credentials as a psychotherapist. His pronounced resistance to the idea only serves as further evidence of his dependency. Nevertheless, there is little I can do if Sam is unwilling to explore the possibility, other than to continue my shared observations and hope that he eventually changes his mind. For the time being, I've decided to focus instead on Sam's feelings towards Bridges and his place within the organization, given that it was founded to support and protect his adoptive mother, and that the other core members have dooms like he does. I think there's something to be gained from the discussion. his growing responsibilities within Bridges due to their expanding mandate, and his abilities as a repatriate surely put him under great pressure. And I wonder if his enthusiasm for their mission was sincere. Based on our time spent together thus far, I believe he may have embraced his role because it helped him to cope with the feelings of isolation, that he pledged himself to an impossible endeavor, because it was preferable to living and dying alone. Report number 4. I decided a different approach was required, and so I requested a meeting with the President. Discretion was vital, as any information which might suggest she is receiving mental health treatment could be exploited by her opponents. The meeting was listed as an interview in official records, though I was more than willing to offer my services had they been requested. I opened by asking about Sam's childhood, to which the President responded with an immediate and heartfelt apology. Her frankness shocked me, I must confess. She expressed deep regret for her failure to engage with him, physically and emotionally, as she felt a mother should. At times it felt though she was apologizing to her son, by proxy. Her candor was impressive, as it was appreciated. The President told me that her daughter Amelie had mostly taken care of Sam in her absence. She glossed over the details, but she divulged that Amelie also has dooms, and she claimed that she would often take Sam with her to play on the beach. Interestingly, President Strand suggested that their time spent together there may be related to his current condition. Report number 5. President Strand loves her son. My meeting with her confirmed this beyond any doubt. The question, I believe, is whether or not Sam perceived his mother's love. Both Sam and the President talk about the beach as though it were a real physical place, but I remain convinced that it does not exist, that it is a shared delusion, and that Sam and Amelie's so-called visits are mental constructs. Sam would not necessarily be aware of this, especially if it had been planted in his mind. Such an explanation would fit with his claims that he has never been able to visit the beach of his own volition. What if, subconsciously, Sam has developed an attachment to or longing for the beach, one that parallels his feelings towards his sister and mother? Furthermore, what if they have all become, in essence, objects of veneration? Upon further consideration, it's not so hard to imagine. President Strand is an exceptional woman who exhibits pan-romantic qualities, as does her daughter Amelie. This is surely one of the reasons why they have been able to commit themselves so completely to the cause of American Reconstruction, their one true love. Sam, on the other hand, I have diagnosed as demisexual. His sexual desires are strictly limited to those with whom he has formed an emotional connection, excepting family members like Amelie, of course. It is only natural to more highly regard those with whom we develop intimate emotional connections. For children, this can lead to veneration. Yet, there is also an inherent contradiction in this, for divinity is distant by nature, even as we yearn to grow closer to it. I have come to the conclusion that this contradiction is at the root of Sam's aphantasmophobia. Report 6. I decided to share with Sam my working theory regarding his condition. I was prepared for some resistance, but the intensity of his anger was surprising. He glared at me as he reframed my assessment as wild speculation, that he had been brainwashed by a cult. It was the first time I'd managed to coax from him such a powerful emotional response. While I found it a little frightening, I did my best to remain professional, welcoming the breakthrough, the reduction in the distance between us. That was how I presented myself, but in retrospect, a part of me was delighted by his aggressive response. Sam stated that he is a repatriate. I challenged him and said that repatriation was nothing more than a fiction used to explain the phenomenon of near-death experiences, one that makes use of the equally fictional beach. Emboldened, I pressed him further, until I finally told him to snap out of it, to renounce his fantasies about the other side. For an instant, I thought he might explode in anger again. But instead he grew quiet, and after a long moment rose to his feet and left the room without saying another word. I fear I may have pushed him too hard. Report number 7. Oh God, where to begin? Sam turned up for his appointment today, right on time. I remember he looked calmer than usual, though that might have been wishful thinking. He'd been thinking about our last session and how it had ended. He said he wished I was right about the beach and what it meant to be a repatriate. That he appreciated the time we'd spent together, that I'd spent listening to his stories. And then he pulled out a syringe. He was still so calm, though at that point I sure wasn't. He said it wasn't all in his head, and that he could prove it, and then he stuck the needle in his chest. It all happened so fast. I froze in my chair as he went into convulsions, eventually falling out of his seat. I ran to him, then, as he was laying on the floor, motionless. I removed the syringe and performed chest compressions, but it was too late. I sat there next to him for what felt like an eternity. And then he opened his eyes and sat up, still wearing that same calm expression. There was another handprint on his arm, a fresh one, left by the dead, he told me before. I'm a repatriate, he said. Every time I die, I get stuck in between, and then come back. He was searching my eyes now, reaching for the words, as much as they were struggling to come out. That world won't have me, and neither will this one. I'm only free to come and go when I'm with her, with Amelie. There were tears in his eyes. He looked so lonely. So I started crying too. I'd taken his hand in mine without realizing, but he didn't pull away. I squeezed, and he squeezed back. He needs someone he can be close to, be intimate with, someone outside his family, someone who isn't Bridget or Amelie, someone to whom he can reveal the whole of himself, someone who'll devote themselves to him. Me. I don't remember what I said, but I remember that he nodded, that he smiled, that we held each other for a long, long time. Report number 8. A few days after the incident in my office, I tendered my resignation. A classic case of countertransference. The therapist getting emotionally involved with her client. And there was no way my professional pride would permit me to continue working. I felt guilty, of course. There's a permanent shortage of therapists, and many of my clients will struggle to find help elsewhere. But after what happened with Sam, I didn't see any other option. To be honest, I've already come to terms with it. What I'm doing for Sam more than makes up for it. I'd never normally use this word, but I really do believe his aphantasmophobia has been cured. He's shown so much progress that, absent an extremely traumatic experience, I doubt his symptoms will ever return. To my surprise, the president didn't have any problems with our relationship. If anything, she was pleased. I suppose this means I'll soon be joining the Strand family, together with his new life growing inside of me. Report number 9. Our baby is doing well. We've been told we're having a girl. Sam's already picked out a name for her. Louise. Lou, he likes to call her. He talks to her a lot, touching my stomach, telling her to grow big and strong. Bridget was delighted when she found out, and suggested that we take a family photograph. Amelie was out of town, so it was just the three of us, blushing, smiling, and that same blush, that same smile. When we received the printout, along with apologies for being old-fashioned, there was a funny little message on it. Be stranded with love. Handwritten and signed. It's unique now. You can't digitize it or copy it. I'll always remember those words, and that moment, forever. Report number 10. Little Lou's 28 weeks old now. The doctor just checked us both out and said we're doing fine, but I'm not so sure. Lately I've been having the same terrible dream every night. I open my eyes, and I'm all alone on the beach. I'm lonely and afraid, so I start wandering around, looking for someone, anyone. I spot Sam and Amelie, standing at the water's edge, their backs to me. Relieved, I call out to them. Her hair shimmers in the gray light, but when she turns, it's her mother's face, twisted with sadness and pain. She speaks and says, "I'll be waiting for you on the beach." And I scream so loud, and then I wake up. Report number 11. Everything's gone wrong. I didn't understand at the time. I was a therapist. A good one. But even I couldn't make sense of the nightmares, or what was happening to me. Bridget came to visit the other day. "They're not nightmares," she said. I hadn't told her yet. I felt Lou stirring inside me as she continued. She said she was sorry, that she hadn't known it would happen. Lou's special. She said that a lot. Lou had Sam's blood, and through her I was bound to the beach. Don't be afraid. She said that a lot, too. I had cured Sam, made him whole, given him a life to live for, to protect, made him a part of this world. She had a lot to say about that, about how the world was a jumbled mess, life and death all mixed up. But that Sam, my Sam, might be the one to make it whole again, like I'd made him whole. Without him, our fate was sealed. But with him, there was still hope for a future. And then she told me I was right. The beach exists within each of our minds. But that didn't mean it was just a figment of our imagination. It had value, purpose, and in time, I would understand. She took my hand like I'd taken his on that day a lifetime ago. She smiled and squeezed. I was there, on the beach, everything I had seen in my nightmares. I saw in that instant, somewhere inside me, Lou was laughing, and that it all fell into place. Sam's birth, his family, the Death Stranding. For the first time, I saw how all the pieces fit into a terrible truth I didn't want to believe, but couldn't deny. I saw my part in it too, and little Lou's. Those funny little words on the picture. Be stranded with love. And I was. Report number 12. You'll have questions, and I wish I had all the answers, but I don't. I only hope this will help you understand. Lou's kicking woke me up. I was alone, still half asleep, so everything around me looked askew. That all too familiar feeling of the waking and dreaming being tangled up. But you and Bridget and Amelie, lead even more muddled lives, don't you? A reality between life and death, between this world and the next. Because of all this chaos and confusion beyond imagination, stranded on our shore. There are pills on the table next to me that I just took, all at once. I've tried to make sense of it, but this was never my world. I was born into an older one without a beach, where the dead stayed buried and life moved on. Damn it, I'm shaking so hard. I don't think the drugs are working. I've got some syringes loaded with sedatives. Enough, I think. I'm going to use them, one after another, until I run out. I love you, Sam. I'll always love you. Other tapes. An asexual world. Records suggest that the widespread aversion towards physical contact and intimacy was a phenomenon that had been observed even before the Death Stranding. One contemporary report, for example, details the increasing popularity of the sexless lifestyle among young people. A growing percentage of the younger cohort were self-identifying as asexual, claiming to be incapable of feeling desire or attraction. Accordingly, such individuals were less likely to have children or engage in sexual activity. It should be noted, however, that many other unique sexual identities were being recognized during this period, such as demisexuals, who are incapable of sexual attraction without an emotional connection, and panromantics, who profess an attraction unrestricted by sex or gender, albeit one not necessarily sexual in nature. One theory posits that the stranding accelerated the proliferation of these sexualities. In a terrifying new world in which BT's Rome and annihilation is an everyday occurrence, people have grown reticent to form emotional connections with others. Although there's been no measurable decrease in human fertility, the birth rate has nevertheless dropped dramatically. Incidents of sexual harassment and assault have also seen a sharp decrease, which seems to suggest could not be further from our minds, for better or for worse. I must preempt myself by admitting that I do not have any empirical data which to support the following claim. That said, it is my contention that based on the aforementioned observations and others, the vast majority of the population could be categorized as asexual. The article above has been flagged for archival review. Article advances a controversial thesis, widely regarded as unsubstantiated and discriminatory. Prevailing theory is that increased self-identification of aforementioned sexualities is due to increased societal awareness and acceptance. Historical records indicate individuals asserting identities falling outside cisgender heteronormativity faced significant discrimination and persecution, leading to suppression and concealment as survival strategies. It is generally accepted that a variety of factors contributed to the reduced sexual activity and birth rate pre- and post-stranding. Studies are ongoing. Dooms and the Zodiac. Astrologers, like me, are used to having our work dismissed. Incorrectly, of course, as unscientific mumbo-jumbo. But since the Death Stranding, more and more people have started to take an interest in what's known as astropsychology, a discipline that combines astrology with various forms of psychology. The fact that each person has a beach to which they are spiritually connected has doubtless contributed to this trend. These days, there are even psychotherapists who use astrological techniques in their counseling sessions. Perhaps the most interesting recent development of all, however, is the discovery that the alignment of celestial bodies at the moment of one's birth can influence one's relationship with the condition known as dooms. Of course, chiralium in the Earth's atmosphere means that it's difficult, dare I say impossible, to actually observe the constellations at any point. To come to the conclusion that they therefore have no effect upon human lives, however, would be a foolish error indeed. Fragile's umbrella and suit. You think that thing Fragile carries is an umbrella? I can see why you jumped to that conclusion, what with the shape and all, but you're wrong. If it's any consolation, I thought it was an umbrella too, at first. It's actually some kind of navigational device that Fragile came up with herself. I won't pretend to understand the theory behind it, but I'm told it factors chiral density across beaches and plots coordinates for her jumps. Fragile's got some kind of dooms that lets her move from beach to beach. The way she tells it, she kind of clears her mind and lets her powers do the rest. Maybe it's something similar with the spikes on her suit. When Fragile senses chiralium concentrations, they pop out. I'm not sure she'd be able to tell otherwise. It's like an unconscious reaction. The spikes only retract when chiral density decreases. But who knows? Names and theories are just ways of coping with things we don't really understand. Same with visual indications of the intangible, maybe. All I can say is that Fragile's umbrella and spikes seem to help her hone her powers. I mean, it is an umbrella, though. It keeps the timefall rain off her face. Who the hell? Those were the doctor's final words. At the time, no one knew to whom he was referring. And to be fair, there were more pressing issues at hand. The doctor in question was a surgeon, specializing in cesarean sections. The procedure he was undertaking at the time, however, was slightly unusual, in that he was operating on a mother who had been declared brain dead 7 months into her pregnancy. She had been placed on life support, but since her blood pressure was decreasing, and the fetus was showing signs of bradycardia, the decision was made to operate. Because the procedure was broadcast to medical researchers on a closed-circuit network, we are fortunate to have a record of what took place. Per the footage, the incision was made without incident. The plan was apparently to remove the fetus from the womb and immediately place it in an NICU, where it would receive the necessary care. Prior to this, the surgeon would of course have to cut the umbilical cord. This is the moment that changed everything. The moment the surgeon's hand touched the cord. In that instant, he uttered his infamous last words. "Who the hell?" From the report on the void out in Manhattan, number 2. Following a number of tests and experiments, the conclusion was reached that the incident was an annihilation event, brought about by the doctor's contact with whatever, or whomever, he had seen upon touching the umbilical cord. Though it eventually became apparent that the doctor had been referring to BTs, at the time no one could explain the underlying cause of the incident. Some later theorized that if the same conditions, brain-dead mother, fetus, umbilical cord, could be recreated, then BTs could be detected, and the mystery of the Death Stranding would be solved. Indeed, this was the theoretical basis upon which the government's own experiments and investigations would be conducted. They called the fetuses they used bridge babies, and the experiments became known as the BB experiments. Soon after the government's program got underway, the tragedy of Manhattan occurred. From the report on the void out in Manhattan, number 3. The BB experiments were conducted at a Manhattan-based government facility, in such extreme secrecy that little is known about them to this day. One thing that we do know for certain, however, is that the experiments ended in tragic failure, and were directly responsible for the total annihilation of the island of Manhattan, as well as the death of the president, who had been observing operations firsthand. He was succeeded by then Vice President Bridget Strand, who shortly after her inauguration put an end to all further BB experiments, and had all data destroyed. With her strong and steadfast leadership in the wake of the void out, she made great strides in quelling the chaos and unrest that had spread throughout the nation. She vowed to rebuild America, and devoted herself wholeheartedly to this end. In response, separatists who opposed Reconstruction emerged and steadily grew more aggressive in their activities. One faction even managed to acquire documents relating to the BB experiments, and some speculate that this data was used to restart them in secret. At that time, however, no BB units are known to have been successfully created, and BBs in general remained a taboo subject in government circles. Clifford Unger, Case Review, Part 1. Captain Clifford Unger, former U.S. Army Special Forces, honorably discharged, was shot dead at a government facility under executive supervision. It should be noted that prior to this altercation, he had cooperated fully with our researchers and contributed to our ongoing BB experiments. On the day of the incident, Captain Unger took an experimental BB hostage and barricaded himself inside one of the facility's rooms. After assessing the situation, the President ordered that a non-violent resolution be pursued, ensuring no harm came to either the captain or the BB. However, this order was directly contravened by Presidential Advisor John Blake McLean, who shot and killed Clifford Unger. Following the incident, McLean refused to surrender himself into custody and fled, and was accordingly designated a most wanted fugitive. Efforts to locate and detain McLean were unsuccessful. However, the search was later called off when an unrelated investigation into a suicide found that the deceased possessed the same social security number as McLean. The body was cremated before physical identification could be performed. Clifford Unger Case Review, Part 2. John Blake McLean was placed under Captain Unger's command upon being accepted into U.S. Army Special Forces. McLean performed exceptionally in training and subsequent deployments, earning commendations and a reputation as a born survivor, who could be thrust into the worst situations imaginable and emerge unscathed. Around the time Captain Unger was discharged, McLean was chosen to serve as special advisor to President Bridget Strand. Though his primary duty was to ensure her personal safety, He became intimately involved with the Bridges 1 initiative, as established by President Strand. Several days prior to the hostage incident, it is suspected that McClane collaborated with Captain Unger to abduct a BB. It has since been confirmed that McClane actively compromised security protocols in a manner which directly aided Captain Unger in his attempt. Therefore, it seems likely that McClane resolved to kill Captain Unger upon concluding that their plot had failed. Though their motives remain unclear, it is speculated that Captain Unger was in possession of compromising information regarding his former subordinate, which he leveraged to secure McClane's assistance in abducting a BB. When this attempt failed, McClane killed Captain Unger in a moment of desperation to prevent him from revealing what he knew. Later, when McClane grasped the gravity of his situation, he chose to take his own life, rather than face the consequences of his actions. Clifford Unger Case Review, Part 3. Due to the circumstances surrounding the murder of Captain Unger and subsequent suicide of John Blake McClane, President Strand assumed direct control of Bridges to ensure that the BB experiments continued. As the organization's purview was expanded, their restrictions were reduced. They became President Strand's primary security apparatus, an elite organization under her direct command, wholly devoted to her mission of American Reconstructionism. A new director was subsequently appointed to lead Bridges, an individual known only as Di Hardman. A Porter's Note, Number 1. To our beloved daughter. I hope you'll get the chance to read this one day. Picturing you doing just that as I write helps me get my thoughts in order. I want to tell you about your mother. We used to work together, way back before you were born. That's how we met, on the road, making deliveries to try and get America back on her feet. She was from a military family, raised by parents who taught her to take care of others, come what may, who gave her the tools to do the job right and proper. And sure enough, she was as tough as they come, and brilliant to boot. Knew all there was to know about guns, medicine, you name it. But more than that, what drew me to her was her compassion, a burning desire to help those in need. Your mother, she believed this country was once a beacon of hope and freedom, and that it was her responsibility to help bring folks back together. Hearing her talk like that, I couldn't help but fall hard. I would have given anything, done anything, to make her dream a reality. Before I knew it, she'd become my beacon, a promise of what could be. And you're that promise fulfilled, proof of what's possible. Child of my American dream. A Porter's Note Number 2, to our beloved daughter. Not too long after you were born, our crew was working with Bridges, carting staff all over to try and help folks get America up and running again. We lost more than a few to BTs, but we stayed the course. Never gave up hope. We'd bought into Bridges' whole song and dance about Reconstruction, see? Nothing but bullshit and lies in service to a false vision. And the cargo they had us carry without our knowledge. They built this facility, said it would help America reconnect with its future or some such. But you know what they actually did there? Sacrificed unborn children. And we were the ones who brought them their little lambs. When we got wise and tried to refuse, they threatened us. Don't you care what happens to your baby girl? Yeah, they thought they had us dead to rights. But your mom's not the type to take that kind of thing lying down. I told you that she left us. Abandoned us. Truth is, that's what she told me. But she lied to keep us safe. She went underground to put together a new crew to protect you and realize her hopes for an America. Traveled all over the country, recruiting and training porters so they could hold their own against Bridges when the time came. Can't do a thing like that without attracting attention, so she took another name. Coffin. Bit dark and scary, you might think. But remember what a coffin's for. Preserving that which was most important to us. The precious, the fleeting, the fragile. A letter from a porter, number 1. My love, as I write these words, I hope and pray that you will one day have the opportunity to read them. I can already imagine what you'll say. A handwritten letter in this day and age? But don't laugh, it's not just affection. Analog's harder to intercept. I've asked some friends of ours to deliver this letter, and I know they'll make sure it gets to you, wherever you may be. Our little girl's doing well. Sometimes I see you in her eyes, but I try not to let it show when I do. There's no denying she's your daughter, though. She's bright as a button and tough as nails. I told her once how much she was like her mother, to which she smiled and said, "I'm like you too, Daddy. I treat people real nice." Anyway, we set up a new delivery base west of Ground Zero. Word is, Bridges is planning to head to the far coast, and are looking to recruit people with dooms to join the caravan. I can't be a part of a plan like that. No, I'm sticking with my own. I'm going to keep working to rebuild the real America, land of hope and the free, one delivery at a time. And I'm going to do it for our little girl. Be careful out there. Don't let Bridges destroy our future. P.S. I've still got the Misanga you gave me. When the time is right, I'll pass it on. I promise you. A porter's note number 2, to our beloved daughter. I heard the Bridges facility near Capital Knot City got blown up. The terrorists, that's what they're calling you, were all killed, apparently. I guess that means you won't be reading this letter. Yet here I am, writing it all the same. You did it, love. You put a stop to the BB program. You may even have helped President Strand find renewed purpose. She's reasserting her authority, claiming she wants to help us rebuild America. And you know what? I believe her. She's nothing like the VP. She's reworking the expedition, proposing a chiral network that could be established without the human cost. But she says she can't do it without us. She needs our connections, our expertise. It sounds like the new plan is for her son, Sam, to lead the expedition. If we're lucky, he's a straight shooter who'll help us rebuild America the right way. Help us honor the sacrifice you've made. P.S. Our daughter's grown up to be a fine young woman. Not that there was ever any doubt. Still, I hope knowing that put your mind at ease. Memo number 1. A call to arms. We're not done yet. Hardly even started, and far from finished. They think they got away with it. Covered up their tracks and took us out for good measure. No one knows, and no one ever will. That's what they believe. But we're still here. Still remember. And we still have the stomach for it, don't we? I know I do. And I think you do too. So stand with me and fight. We'll destroy that fake future Bridges is building for us, and reclaim what's rightfully ours. Memo number 2, from mother to daughter. I'm sorry. 5 years isn't enough time to get your bearings, much less live a life. You were the only one I could save. Could only dig graves for the others, and then for you, in the end. Dig and grieve, and try to make amends. All that's left to me is her, my daughter, my sole remaining glimmer of hope. Our future may be broken, but it's not beyond repair. Futures are fragile things, but my daughter's made of stronger stuff. She has what it takes to pick up the pieces and put them back together again. I hope. I pray. Memo number 3, from mother to daughter. This used to be a Bridges factory, right up until we stormed the place. Those Bridges fuckers showed their true colors that day, let me tell you. It was a brutal battle. But once they understood we weren't backing down, they got desperate and demoed the place. So many died. Researchers, guards, babies. Their own people. And Bridges covered it up. Sealed off the whole area. But a few of us survived, hidden beneath the rubble. This region's thick with Karelium. Most everyone's gone Gestalt. Same thing will happen to me before long. I'll always love you. We may never see each other again, but I know in my heart you turned out strong. You and your friends, you're going to rebuild America. I have faith. Memo number 4, from mother to daughter. A long time ago, my husband and I, along with a few friends of ours, established a delivery operation to help people rebuild and reconnect. We were all aboard the Bridges train, American Reconstructionism and all that, and we were happy to cooperate with them. Then, one day, we realized we weren't just delivering documents and groceries anymore. We were delivering you, BBs, offering you up to the altar of progress, to provide the foundation for Bridges' state-of-the-art communication network. It might well have brought America closer together, but some prices aren't worth paying. We objected, but Bridges wouldn't hear it. So, we took matters into our own hands. Did some digging. Learned that President Strand wasn't party to the plan. Was the VP, acting on their own initiative, most likely, betraying Bridget and America both. Once they knew we knew, they came for us, started threatening our families. I had a husband and a newborn, and I couldn't let any harm come to them. I had to disappear, go underground, started going by coffin, and began recruiting like-minded patriots to form an organization to fight back against Bridges. It was my attempt at atonement, I suppose, or the part I'd played in that unconscionable evil. Soon I was training porters day and night, teaching them how to fight and survive. And one day I hear about this kid, a freelancer with a very unique skill set. Not dooms exactly, but something similar. A sixth sense for BTs. He wasn't too sure about signing up for the cause, though. His father had been a real piece of work, the kind to talk with his fists. He carried that legacy of violence, and the thought of facing more terrified him. I could tell. But I couldn't let him walk. We talked long into the night, and at the end, I looked him in the eye and said, "A heart can only bleed so much. Gotta harden yours some if you're gonna stay unbroken." And he joined the next day. A porter that can track BTs, a priceless asset. Too many sacrifices to count. I prayed that one would be the last. Memo number 5, from mother to daughter. The freelancer's name was Peter Englert. His father died when he was young, leaving Peter to fend for himself. There was such fear in him, but beneath that, a terrible anger at the world and everyone in it. At the time, I believed it was a manifestation of a passion to build something better. I convinced myself, or tried to. I told Peter what Bridges was doing, and asked him to help me put an end to it. The plan was simple. I'd hit the BB production facility with my group, and he'd take his people west to establish a base of operations for our resistance, maintain cover as a porter, but keep his eyes peeled for potential recruits. I haven't heard anything from my husband in a while, and I'm beginning to fear the worst. Did Bridges get to him? What about my daughter? Is she safe? I wish I had more time. I haven't told anyone yet, but I'm not well. Too many miles on this body. I can feel it breaking down. So little time to stop Bridges, to make it right. The cause will outlive me. It must. I made Peter promise to keep the flame burning, even after my husband and I are gone. I made him promise to look after our daughter, too. She's strong in her own way, but still too fragile for this world. I fear, I pray she doesn't break. I pray a brighter future awaits her, and Peter too, that poor boy. That was the last of the recovered recordings from the Death Stranding incident. Fragmented interviews, personal journals, field reports preserved in analog from couriers, scientists, soldiers. From the broken-hearted, the hopeful, and the damned. The bridges they built collapsed. The networks failed. The institutions turned on the people they swore to protect. But the voices on these tapes kept reaching out anyway. Not because connection was the answer, but because it was the only defiance they had left. A prepper leaving instructions for a stranger. A mother writing words her daughter may never read. A porter carrying something heavier than cargo. Every entry on these tapes is a delivery, not of supplies, but of testimony. Proof that someone was here, that they reached across the silence. Even knowing no one might be listening, the strands held where the bridges couldn't. The tapes end here. The echoes don't.